Grandpa, tonight, my parents are going to take away your fortune, whispered my 7-year-old granddaughter Zola, pulling on the sleeve of my worn-out flannel shirt. I froze. My son Darius and his wife Tiffany were clinking glasses across the room, celebrating my birthday while plotting my demise. They thought I was just a broke old man, a burden waiting to be disposed of. They did not know I was the secret owner of an $80 million logistics empire. I set my glass down and smiled a cold smile that never reached my eyes. What I did next shocked everyone. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who you are. My name is Solomon Jefferson, and for 71 years I have learned that silence is the loudest sound in the world. I drove my 1998 Ford pickup truck down the street towards my son's house. The engine rattled and coughed, a sound that usually embarrassed my son Darius, but to me it sounded like honest work. I parked the truck 2 blocks away because last time I parked in the driveway, my daughter-in-law Tiffany complained that my rust bucket was ruining the aesthetic of their neighborhood. Aesthetic. A word people use when they are drowning in debt but want to look like they are swimming in gold. I walked up to the house clutching a small wrapped gift for myself inside my pocket. It was my 71st birthday, but I knew better than to expect a celebration. The house was a 2-story colonial with peeling paint on the trim and a lawn that was overgrown. Darius always blamed the economy or the system for why he could not hire a landscaper, but I knew the truth. He was lazy. He spent more time polishing his image on social media than he did working his sales job. When I opened the door, the noise hit me first. It was not family laughter. It was loud, bass-heavy music and the clinking of cheap glass. There were about 20 people in the living room, mostly friends of Darius and Tiffany, people who looked at me like I was the hired help seeking payment. Darius saw me and forced a smile that looked painful. "Dad, you made it," he shouted over the music, holding a red plastic cup. "Come on in, stay in the back, though we have some potential investors here." I walked into the kitchen. The birthday spread was an insult, not because it was modest. I grew up eating beans and rice, and I was grateful for every bite. It was an insult because it was careless. On the counter sat a supermarket sheet cake with a 50% off sticker still on the plastic lid. The frosting was cracked. The pizza was cold and looked like it had been ordered hours ago. There were no plates, just a roll of paper towels. Tiffany breezed into the kitchen. Her heels clicked aggressively on the linoleum. She was a petite woman with sharp features and eyes that always seemed to be calculating the cost of everything she looked at. "Oh, Solomon," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You are here. We were just telling our friends how quaint you are living in that old house all by yourself." She reached out and flicked the collar of my flannel shirt. "You know, Dad, if you sold that dusty old place, you could afford some new clothes. Maybe something that does not smell like diesel and Old Spice." I looked at her. I looked at the woman my son chose. The woman who maxed out 3 credit cards last month to buy designer handbags while I quietly paid their electric bill so my granddaughter would not freeze. I did not say a word. I just pulled a paper towel and took a slice of cold pepperoni pizza. I have eaten worse. I thought back to the days when I started Jefferson Logistics, just me in one beat-up van, driving 18 hours a day, sleeping in rest stops, eating crackers for dinner to save money for Darius's private school tuition. They saw an old man in a flannel shirt. They did not see the man who built a freight empire that moved goods across 40 states. They did not see the man who could buy this entire neighborhood with a single phone call to my bank. Darius came in, patting me on the back a little too hard. "Happy birthday, old man. Listen, we need to keep it low-key tonight. Tiffany and I are trying to close a deal with some crypto guys, so just relax in the corner and try not to talk about the post office, okay?" He thought I lived on a postal worker's pension. He thought the checks I sent them every month were me scraping the bottom of my savings. He had no idea those checks were less than what I spent on fuel for one of my fleets in a single hour. I sat in a folding chair in the corner of the dining room watching them. The guests ignored me except for a few side glances filled with pity. I heard Tiffany laughing in the living room. "Oh God, no, we are just waiting for the right time," she was saying loud and clear. "The old man is losing it honestly. It is dangerous for him to be alone. We are looking into facilities, state-run ones of course, because he has no savings. It is a burden, but what can you do? Family is family." I chewed my cold pizza slowly. State-run facilities. A burden. My hands clenched into fists under the table. They were not just disrespectful, they were ungrateful. I had spent 40 years building a legacy, hoping to pass it down, hoping Darius would step up and be a man. But he was 40 years old, still blaming the world, still waiting for a handout. Then I felt a small hand on my knee. I looked down. It was Zola, my 7-year-old granddaughter. She was the only reason I kept the secret. The only reason I kept funding their lifestyle. She was wearing a dress that was too small for her, and her hair was messy, clearly ignored by her parents who were too busy playing rich. Zola had my eyes and my wife Beatrice's spirit. "Hi, Grandpa," she whispered, climbing onto my lap. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and innocence. "Are you having a happy birthday?" I forced a smile for her. "I am now baby girl." She looked around the room, her eyes wide and fearful. She leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. "Grandpa," she whispered so low I almost missed it. "You have to go." "Why Zola?" I asked, keeping my voice calm despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. "Tonight," she said, her voice trembling. "Tonight after the cake, Mommy and Daddy are going to make you sign papers. They were fighting about it last night. Daddy said he owes bad men a lot of money. Mommy said your house is the only thing left. She said you are going to the warehouse." "The warehouse?" I asked, thinking she meant my company's distribution center. "No, Grandpa?" Zola shook her head, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "The warehouse where they put old people who forget things. Mommy said once you are there, you never come back, and they can sell your house and keep all the money. She said you are too old to know the difference." The air left my lungs. It felt like I had been punched in the gut by a heavyweight boxer. It was not just disrespect, it was a conspiracy. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I held when he cried over his first heartbreak. He was planning to declare me incompetent. He was planning to lock me away in a state-run facility, a hellhole, just to sell my modest 3-bedroom home to pay off his gambling debts. I looked across the room at Darius. He was laughing at some joke, his arm around Tiffany. They looked successful, happy, and completely soulless. They were vultures circling what they thought was a dying carcass. They did not realize the carcass was a sleeping lion. I hugged Zola tight, kissing her forehead. "Don't you worry, baby girl," I whispered. My voice was steady, cold, and hard. "Grandpa hears you, and Grandpa is not going to any warehouse." I stood up. My knees popped, but I stood tall. I was 6'2", a stature that used to intimidate union leaders and negotiate million-dollar contracts. I smoothed my flannel shirt. I did not say goodbye to the guests. I did not wait for the cake. I walked straight to the front door. Darius saw me leaving. "Hey, Dad, where are you going? We haven't even cut the cake yet." He sounded annoyed, not disappointed. I turned and looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in years. I saw the sweat on his brow, the nervous twitch in his eye, the desperation of a man drowning in his own mistakes. "I am tired, Darius," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I usually reserve for him. "I am going home to rest." Tiffany rolled her eyes, clearly relieved. "Fine, but don't forget we are coming over tomorrow morning to check on you." She emphasized the words "check on you" like a threat. "I will be waiting," I said. I opened the door and walked out into the cool night air. I did not look back. I walked 2 blocks to my truck, got in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They wanted my house. They wanted to throw me away like trash. They wanted a fight. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and dialed a number I had not called in months. It rang twice before a sharp professional voice answered. "Hello, Mr. Jefferson. It is late. Is everything all right?" "It is time, Aisha," I said to my attorney, my voice dark and resolute. "Prepare the files on Darius and Tiffany. Execute Protocol Omega. I want to buy their debt, every single cent of it." There was a pause on the other line, followed by the sound of typing. "Understood, sir. Do you want to leave them anything?" "Leave them nothing," I said, shifting the truck into gear. "I am going to teach my son the lesson I should have taught him 20 years ago." I drove away from that house, leaving the noise of the cheap party behind. The sad old man in the flannel shirt was gone. In his place was Solomon Jefferson, the ruthless businessman, and I was about to hostile take over my own family. I did not sleep that night. My house was silent, but my mind was a roaring engine on a steep grade. I sat in my leather recliner in the dark, the only light coming from the screen of my tablet. People think because I wear flannel and drive a truck that is older than most college students, I do not understand technology. They are wrong. When I fixed the electrical wiring in Darius's house 3 months ago, I installed tiny pinhole cameras in the kitchen and the living room. I told myself it was to keep an eye on Zola to make sure the babysitters were treating her right. But deep down, a father's instinct is a sharp and terrible thing. I think I knew even then that the wolves were already in the house. I tapped the screen and the live feed from their kitchen flickered to life. It was 2 a.m, but Darius and Tiffany were wide awake. The audio was crisp. I could hear the ice clinking in Darius's glass. He was drinking whiskey, the expensive kind he bought with the money I sent for Zola's dental work. Tiffany was pacing back and forth, her face twisted into a mask of pure venom. "We are drowning, Darius," she hissed, slamming a stack of envelopes onto the counter. I saw the red stamps on them. Final notice. Past due. Foreclosure warning. She pointed a manicured finger at my son. "You owe $200,000 to that online casino. My credit cards are maxed out at $80,000. The bank called today. They are coming for this house in 30 days if we do not come up with a lump sum." Darius put his head in his hands. "I know, Tiff. I know. I am trying to figure it out." "Figure it out," she mocked him. "There is nothing to figure out. We have the solution living 2 miles away in a house that is completely paid off. That old man is sitting on $500,000 of equity in that property. If we sell it, we clear the gambling debt. We clear the cards. We have enough to start over. But he won't sell." Darius whined. "He loves that place. Mom died there." "He won't have a choice," Tiffany said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that made my blood run cold. "He is senile, Darius. He forgets things. Tomorrow you go over there, you take the papers for the new health insurance policy we talked about. But you slip the power of attorney document in the middle. You tell him it is just standard authorization for his checkups. He will sign it. He trusts you. He is a stupid, trusting old fool." I watched my son. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to say that I was not senile, that I was sharp as a tack. I waited for him to say that I was his father. Instead, Darius took a long sip of whiskey and nodded. "Okay, we do it tomorrow morning, but we have to be fast. Once we have the signature, we list the house immediately. We put him in the state facility on 4th Street, the one with the shared rooms. It is cheap. His pension will cover the cost and we keep the rest." I turned off the tablet. I could not watch anymore. I sat there in the darkness, and the silence of the room was replaced by the roar of memories. I closed my eyes and I was back in the cab of my first rig, a 1980 Peterbilt that smelled of diesel and stale coffee. I remembered the nights I spent driving through ice storms in Nebraska, my hands cramping on the steering wheel, my eyes burning from exhaustion. I remembered eating cold beans out of a can at a rest stop in Arizona on Thanksgiving Day because I had taken a triple pay holiday load. I did it for Darius. Every mile I drove was $1 for his future. I missed his first steps because I was hauling lumber to Oregon. I missed his 5th birthday party because I was stuck in a snowdrift in heavy traffic outside of Chicago. I worked 18-hour days destroying my back and my knees so that he would never have to know what it felt like to be hungry. I paid for private schools where he was the only black child in the class. I bought him the newest sneakers so he would fit in. I shielded him from the harshness of the world. And this was my reward. The boy I had protected from the cold was now planning to throw me into the freezing snow just to keep himself warm. He did not see a father. He saw a piggy bank that he could smash open. The sun came up, but it brought no warmth. I made a pot of coffee, black and strong, and sat at my kitchen table. I heard his car pull into the driveway at 9 o'clock sharp. Darius walked in, dressed in a suit that cost more than my monthly grocery bill, carrying a leather portfolio. He had a smile plastered on his face, the same smile he used when he wanted money. "Hey, Pops," he said, trying to sound cheerful. "I brought you some donuts. And hey, good news. I found a great new health insurance plan for you. Better coverage, lower deductible. I just need you to sign a few forms so we can get you enrolled today." He laid the papers out on the table. There were about 10 pages. He fanned them out so that only the signature lines were visible. I looked at him. I looked at his soft hands that had never done a day of hard labor. I looked at his eyes, which were shifting nervously around the room. "Is this going to cost me anything, son?" I asked, making my voice sound thin and wavering. I let my hand tremble as I reached for my reading glasses. "No, Dad. Not a dime," Darius said, pushing a pen into my hand. "It is all taken care of. I just want to make sure you are taken care of. You know how much I worry about you." I looked down at the papers. The top one was indeed an insurance form. But the third one, the one he had tucked cleverly underneath, was a durable power of attorney granting Darius Marcus Jefferson full control over all my assets and property. My heart was a stone in my chest. He was really doing it. He was looking me in the face, smiling while holding the knife against my throat. I picked up the pen. I let my hand shake violently. I squinted my eyes as if I could barely see the paper. "My eyes are not what they used to be, Darius," I mumbled. "I can hardly read this small print." "It is okay, Dad, just sign right there by the X," he said, tapping the paper impatiently. I leaned forward. I put the pen to the paper. But I did not sign Solomon Jefferson. I dragged the pen across the line in a jagged, messy scrawl. To a casual observer, it looked like the shaky signature of an old man. But if anyone looked closely, truly closely, they would see that I had not written my name at all. I had written S, not fool. "There," I said, dropping the pen. "Is that all?" "That is it, Dad," Darius said, snatching the papers up before I could look at them again. "You did great. I will file these today." He stood up, already checking his watch. He did not ask how I was feeling. He did not ask about Zola. He had what he wanted. "I have to run Pop's busy day at the office," he lied. I watched him walk out the door. He practically skipped to his car. He thought he had just won the lottery. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. I stood up and walked to the window. My tremors vanished. My posture straightened. I watched his car disappear down the street. "You think you are a wolf." "Darius," I said to the empty room, "but you just walked into the bear cave, and you forgot to check if the bear was awake." I picked up my phone. It was time to go to work. I had a meeting with my attorney, Aisha Reynolds, in 1 hour. Darius had started a war, but he had no idea he was fighting a general. I was going to buy his debt. I was going to buy his mortgage. And when he tried to use that piece of paper to sell my house, he was going to find out that Solomon Jefferson does not sign anything he has not read 3 times. He wanted my money. He was going to get it. But he was going to get it on my terms. And the interest rate was going to be very, very high. I parked my rusted Ford F-150 in the underground parking structure of the Skyline Tower. The valet looked at my truck with disdain until he saw my face. He stiffened immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Jefferson." I did not smile. I tossed him the keys. "Keep it close," I said. I walked to the private elevator in the back corner. There is a biometric scanner there that only accepts 1 fingerprint. Mine. As the doors slid shut and the cabin began to rise 40 floors above the city, I felt a physical shift in my body. The stoop in my shoulders that I adopted to look harmless vanished. My spine straightened. The tremors in my hands that I used to fool Darius ceased completely. By the time the elevator dinged on the penthouse floor, I was no longer the confused old man worried about health insurance. I was the founder of Jefferson Logistics. I was the man who crushed union strikes in the 90s and negotiated trade deals that kept this city fed. I was the shark. The doors opened into a space of glass and steel. My office. It was a stark contrast to the peeling paint and drafty windows of the home Darius was so eager to sell. Here the carpet was thick enough to sleep on, and the view stretched all the way to the harbor where my containers were currently being unloaded. Aisha Reynolds was waiting for me. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window looking out at the city. She turned as I entered. Aisha was 35 years old, sharp as a razor blade, and the only person on this earth who knew the full extent of my net worth. She did not waste time with pleasantries. She knew why I was here. "Good morning, Solomon," she said, her voice tight. She pointed to the mahogany conference table. In the center sat a single thick black dossier. It looked like a tombstone. "The report is ready. It is worse than we thought." I walked to the table and sat in my leather executive chair. For a moment I hesitated. My hand hovered over the folder. This was not just financial data. This was the autopsy of my son's character. I took a deep breath and opened it. The first page was a summary of Darius Marcus Jefferson's liabilities. The number at the bottom of the page made my stomach turn. $284,000 in unsecured debt. I looked up at Aisha. "Explain this," I demanded, my voice echoing in the large room. Aisha sat opposite me and opened her laptop. She began to read, and every sentence was a nail in the coffin of my fatherly love. "Darius has a gambling problem, Solomon. A severe one. He has lost over $200,000 in online sports betting in the last 18 months. He chases losses. He bets on everything. Football, basketball, cricket in India. He is bleeding money. I looked at the itemized bank statements in the folder. There were withdrawals at 3 a.m, transfers to offshore betting sites, and then there were the deposits. Small, pitiful deposits from his salary followed immediately by massive transfers out. He was working just to feed the beast. And Tiffany? I asked, dreading the answer. Aisha swiped a finger across her tablet. Tiffany is just as bad, but her vice is different. She feels entitled to a lifestyle they cannot afford. She has $80,000 in credit card debt. She has 5 cards maxed out. The interest rates are predatory. She is paying minimum payments on cards with 25% interest. She is buying designer clothes, eating at 5-star restaurants, and leasing a luxury SUV, all while their house is drowning. Their house, I asked. It is in pre-foreclosure, Aisha said, dropping the final bomb. They took out a second mortgage 2 years ago to pay off an earlier gambling debt. They have missed the last 3 payments. The bank sent a notice of default last week. They have 30 days, Solomon. If they do not come up with a lump sum, the bank takes the house. That is why they are desperate. That is why they need your house. I closed the folder and swiveled my chair to look out the window. I watched the traffic crawling like ants down below. I thought about the hours I spent teaching Darius the value of $1. I made him mow lawns. I made him save his allowance. I thought I raised a man who understood that wealth is built, not found. I was wrong. I raised a parasite. They are drowning, I said softly, talking to the glass. They are drowning, and they decided the only way to save themselves was to use my body as a raft. They are dangerous, Solomon, Aisha said, coming to stand beside me. Desperate people do desperate things. The forgery this morning was just the beginning. If they do not get your house, they will go to loan sharks. They might even try to physically harm you to accelerate the inheritance. We need to insulate you. I spun the chair back around. The sadness was gone, burned away by a cold, white-hot rage. I was done being the victim. I was done being the disappointed father. It was time to be the businessman. We are not just going to insulate me, Aisha, I said, leaning forward, my elbows on the mahogany table. We are going to go on the offensive. I want to execute a hostile takeover. Aisha raised an eyebrow. Explain. Who holds their debt? I asked, pointing at the dossier. Who holds the second mortgage? Who holds the credit card debt? A mix of banks and a secondary collection agency for the gambling debts, Aisha replied. Buy it, I commanded. Buy it all. Use Nemesis Holdings. I want to own every cent of debt Darius and Tiffany have. I want to be the one holding the leash on their mortgage. I want to be the one collecting the interest on her credit cards. I want to own them. Aisha's eyes widened. She was a ruthless attorney, but even she was surprised by the ferocity of my decision. Solomon, that will cost nearly $300,000 in liquid cash. You are talking about becoming your son's direct creditor. If you do this, you will have the power to evict them. You will have the power to garnish their wages. You will destroy their credit rating forever. They tried to declare me incompetent. I slammed my hand on the table. The sound was like a gunshot. They tried to put me in a state warehouse. They looked me in the eye this morning and smiled while they stole my autonomy. No, Aisha, I am not destroying them. I am teaching them. The world is cruel. They think they can cheat their way through life. They think they can prey on the weak. Well, they just picked a fight with the biggest predator in the jungle. Buy the debt. Do it today. Pay the premiums to expedite the transfer. By tomorrow morning, I want to own every mistake they have ever made. Aisha typed furiously on her laptop for a moment, then looked up. A small, terrifying smile played on her lips. It can be done. We can acquire the mortgage note by end of business day. The consumer debt will take 48 hours. But Solomon, once we own the house, what is the play? Do we foreclose? Not yet, I said, standing up. I buttoned my suit jacket. I walked over to the wall where a portrait of my late wife Beatrice hung. She was looking down at me, her eyes full of kindness. She would have hated this. She would have cried for Darius. But she also hated a thief, and she hated a liar. We do not foreclose yet, I said, staring at her picture. We squeeze them. We let them feel the pressure. We let them think they have won with that power of attorney. And then, when they try to make their move, when they try to sell my home, we reveal who really owns the roof over their heads. I turned back to Aisha. My voice was low and gravelly. Send a notice to their house tomorrow morning. issue a demand letter from Nemesis Holdings. Tell them the new owner of their debt is reviewing their assets. Tell them they have 7 days to pay in full or face immediate legal action. Do not put my name on it. Let them sweat. Let them panic. Let them see what real pressure feels like. Understood, Aisha said, closing the laptop. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and admiration. You are a hard man, Solomon. I walked to the door, pausing to look at my reflection in the glass. I saw the gray hair and the wrinkles, but I also saw the fire in my eyes. I am a father, Aisha, and sometimes a father has to break his children's legs to keep them from running into traffic. Darius wants to play a grown-up game. He is about to learn the grown-up rules. I left the office and took the elevator down. As I descended, I let my shoulders slump again. I let the tremor return to my hands. By the time I reached my truck, I was Grandpa Solomon again, but inside I was counting down the hours. The war had begun, and I had just bought the battlefield. The next afternoon, Darius and Tiffany came to pick me up. They were dressed in their Sunday best, trying to look respectable. They told me we were going on a little field trip. They called it a tour of a senior living community. They made it sound like a resort. They used words like active lifestyle and golden years. I sat in the back of their leased SUV and said nothing. I wore my faded work jacket and gripped my cane. I let my hands shake. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I played the part of the confused old man perfectly. We drove past the nice neighborhoods. We drove past the well-maintained facilities with gardens and balconies. We kept driving until the pavement cracked and the streetlights were broken. We pulled up to a squat brick building surrounded by a chain-link fence. The sign out front said Sunny Meadows Care Center, but there was no sun, and there were certainly no meadows. There was only a patch of dead brown grass and a dumpster overflowing with trash. This is it, Dad, Darius said, putting the car in park. It is very affordable, and they have great staff. Tiffany turned around in the front seat, her smile tight and predatory. It is cozy, Solomon. You will make so many friends here. It is just like a dormitory for seniors. I stepped out of the car. The smell hit me first. It was the smell of bleach trying to cover up the scent of urine and boiled cabbage. It was the smell of despair. We walked inside. The linoleum floor was scuffed and yellowed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry hornets. In the lobby, a television was blaring a cartoon, but no one was watching it. 3 elderly people sat in wheelchairs lined up against the wall. They were slumped over asleep or staring at nothing. They looked like discarded furniture. An administrator walked out of an office. She was a tired-looking woman with a stain on her blouse. She did not look at me. She looked straight at Darius. You are here for the bed in Ward C, she asked, holding a clipboard. Yes, Darius said. We want to get him settled as soon as possible. She nodded. Follow me. We walked down a long hallway. The rooms were small and dark. In one room I saw 2 beds separated by a thin curtain. A man was coughing a wet, rattling cough that sounded like death. In another room a woman was crying softly for her mother. See, Dad, Tiffany chirped loud enough to wake the dead. Look how much activity there is. You will never be bored. We reached Ward C. It was at the back of the building near the loading dock. The room they showed me had no window. It had a single metal bed and a nightstand that was missing a drawer. The mattress was thin and stained. This is perfect, Tiffany said, clapping her hands. It is low maintenance. You will not have to worry about cleaning a big house anymore. You can just rest here, Solomon. Just rest. I looked at the bed. I imagined lying there, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, waiting to die. I imagined eating the slop they served in the cafeteria. I imagined being forgotten. I turned to Darius. Son, I said, making my voice tremble, it is very dark in here. I am scared. Darius sighed, loud and impatient. It is not dark, Dad. It is efficient. You do not need a big room. You just need a place to sleep. The house is too much work for you. This is for your own good. For my own good. The lie hung in the air, thick and suffocating. They were not doing this for me. They were doing this for the equity in my home. They were doing this so they could pay off their gambling debts and buy more designer clothes. They were burying me alive so they could live like kings. I decided it was time for the final test. I needed to know if there was even a single drop of humanity left in them. We walked back toward the lobby. My stomach rumbled loudly. I had skipped lunch on purpose. I am hungry, son, I said, stopping by a vending machine. I would like a bag of chips. Maybe a bottle of water. My throat is dry. I patted my pockets, searching for the wallet I had intentionally left on my kitchen table. Oh no, I mumbled. I must have forgotten my wallet at home. Darius, can you buy your old dad a snack? It is only $2. I looked at him. I looked at the man I raised. I looked at the man whose tuition I paid, whose first car I bought, whose mistakes I had covered for 40 years. I have $80 million in assets. I could buy this entire facility and turn it into a parking lot. But in that moment, I was just a thirsty old man asking his son for a bottle of water. Darius patted his pockets, performing a pantomime of checking for cash. Sorry, Pops, no cash on me. Use your card, I suggested, pointing to the card reader on the machine. Tiffany stepped in. We are in a hurry, Solomon. We have to get back to pick up Zola. You can drink water from the tap when we get you home. Besides, we do not want to spoil your dinner, spoil my dinner. A bag of chips. They were about to steal a house worth $400,000 from me, but they would not spend $2 to feed me. They were not just greedy. They were cruel. They were cheap. They were hollow. I looked at the water fountain near the restrooms. It was covered in lime scale and had a piece of gum stuck to the spout. Okay, I said softly. I understand. We got back in the car. The drive to their house was silent. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by. I was saying goodbye to my son, not out loud, but in my heart. The cord was cut. The last thread of hope I had held on to snapped right there in that vending machine aisle. When we pulled up to Darius S.'s house, it was almost 6 in the evening. The house was dark. I thought the babysitter was here, Darius said, frowning. They unlocked the door and walked in. I followed slowly, dragging my feet. The house was a mess. Toys were scattered everywhere, dirty dishes piled up in the sink, and there on the living room rug sat Zola. She was curled up in a ball, hugging her knees. She was still wearing her school uniform. Her hair was uncombed. Her face was streaked with dried tears. Zola, I called out, dropping my act. I rushed over to her. She looked up and her eyes were red. Grandpa, she hiccuped, I am hungry. The babysitter left. She said she had to go. I have been here by myself. I looked at the clock. School ended at 3. It was 6. They had left a 7-year-old child alone in a dark house for hours while they took me on a tour of my grave. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Oh, stop crying, Zola. You are fine. We were busy doing something important for the family. There is cereal in the cupboard. Cereal. I felt a rage so hot it almost blinded me. They neglected my granddaughter. They neglected their own child. They were monsters. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. It was full of expensive wine and beer, but there was no milk. There was no fresh fruit. There was nothing for a child. I turned to Darius. You left her alone, I said, my voice losing its tremor. You left your daughter alone to show me a room with no windows. Darius poured himself a drink. Relax, Dad. She is 7. She can watch TV. Do not tell me how to raise my child. You are the one who needs a babysitter, not her. That was it. The line was crossed. They could come for me. They could come for my money. But they came for Zola. They hurt the only innocent thing in this entire wretched family. I walked back to the living room. I knelt down in front of Zola. Come here, baby girl, I said gently. I picked her up. She buried her face in my neck, sobbing. Where are you going? Tiffany demanded, hands on her hips. I am taking my granddaughter to get some dinner, I said, standing up with Zola in my arms. Since you two are obviously too busy spending money, you do not have to feed your own child. Darius stepped forward, blocking my path. You are not taking her anywhere. You are confused, old man. Put her down. I looked at him. I let the mask slip just a fraction. I let him see the steel beneath the flannel. I let him see the eyes of the man who built an empire from dirt. Get out of my way, Darius, I said. My voice was low. It was dangerous. He blinked. He stepped back. He did not know why, but he was suddenly afraid. He saw something in my face that he did not recognize. He saw power. I walked out the door with Zola. I put her in my truck. Grandpa, are you mad? She asked, wiping her eyes. No, baby, I said, buckling her in. Grandpa is not mad. Grandpa is focused. We went to a diner. I ordered her a burger, fries, and a milkshake. I ordered myself a coffee. I watched her eat. I watched the color come back to her cheeks. They did not deserve her. They did not deserve me. and as of today, they did not deserve a single penny of the Jefferson fortune. I took out my phone while she ate. I texted Aisha. Add a clause to the takeover, I wrote. I want full custody of Zola. Use the neglect. Use the gambling. Use everything. I am taking the child. Aisha replied instantly. It will be a war, Solomon. Good, I typed back. I have plenty of ammunition. I looked at Zola. She smiled at me, milkshake mustache on her upper lip. We are going to be okay, baby girl, I promised her. I took her back to her parents' house because I had to, for now. But as I drove away, I knew it was the last time I would leave her there without a fight. The tour of the nursing home had clarified everything. They wanted to put me in a cage. Fine, I would put them in one instead. A cage made of debt of shame and of their own failures. And I would be the one holding the key. The inspection was over. The demolition was about to begin. I was enjoying a cup of Earl Grey tea when the pounding started. It was not a polite knock. It was the heavy, authoritative thud of law enforcement. I checked my watch. 8:15 in the morning. Darius was punctual. I had to give him that. He was lazy in every other aspect of his life, but when it came to stealing my property, he operated with military precision. I stood up slowly and walked to the door. I was wearing my usual attire, faded jeans and a flannel shirt. But underneath the cuff of my sleeve, I wore a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than Darius's car. I slid it off and put it in my pocket before opening the door. Officer Miller stood on my porch. He was a young man with a stern face. Behind him was a woman in a beige suit holding a clipboard. She looked tired, and behind them, pacing back and forth like a caged animal, was Darius. He was putting on the performance of a lifetime. He was rubbing his temples. He looked distraught. "Thank God you are here," he shouted when he saw the officer. "We have to get inside. He is a danger to himself. He nearly burned the house down yesterday." Officer Miller looked at me. "Mr. Jefferson, we received a call from your son requesting a welfare check and an emergency mental health evaluation. He claims you left the gas stove on all night and wandered into the street." I opened the door wider. My face was a mask of confusion. "Burned the house down." I repeated the words slowly, letting my voice crack. "I do not understand. I was just having tea." Darius pushed past the officer and stormed into my living room. See? See how he looks? He is confused, officer. He does not even remember what happened. "Dad, you called me at 3 in the morning screaming about fire. You left the gas on. If I had not come over and turned it off, this whole block would be ash." The woman in the beige suit stepped forward. "Mr. Jefferson, my name is Mrs. Gable. I am from Adult Protective Services. Your son has filed an emergency petition for temporary guardianship. He is very concerned about your cognitive decline. We need to assess your living conditions." I looked at Darius. He was avoiding my eyes. He was looking at the walls, calculating their value. He had filed the paperwork. He had lied to the police. He had escalated this to a level I had not anticipated. He wanted me declared incompetent today. He wanted me removed from this house in handcuffs or a straitjacket so he could change the locks before lunch. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside. "I welcome the company." We walked into the kitchen. This was the stage for Darius's little play. He pointed dramatically at the stove. "Right there," he yelled. "That is the death trap. He forgets to turn the dials. He leaves the pilot light running. It smells like gas in here right now. Can you smell it, officer?" Officer Miller sniffed the air. He frowned. "I do not smell gas, sir." "That is because I aired it out," Darius insisted. "But look at it. It is ancient. It is dangerous." Mrs. Gable walked over to the stove. She took out a pen, ready to write down a violation, ready to tick the box that said unsafe environment, ready to sign my life away to my son. I walked over to the counter. I picked up my tea. I took a sip. "Darius," I said calmly, "when was the last time you cooked a meal in this house?" Darius blinked. "What does that have to do with anything? I grew up here. I know this house." "Answer the question, son. When was the last time you stood in front of this stove and cooked?" "I do not know. 10 years ago, before Mom died." "What is your point, old man?" "My point," I said, setting the tea down, "is that I renovated the kitchen 6 months ago." I walked over to the stove. It looked black and sleek. It looked like glass. "This is a Wolf induction cooktop," I explained, running my hand over the surface. "It uses magnetism to heat the cookware directly. There is no open flame. There is no heating element. And most importantly, Darius, there is no gas line." I opened the cabinet underneath. I pulled out the pots and pans, revealing the wall behind the unit. I had the gas line capped and removed by the city in February, I continued. I switched to electric because it is more energy efficient. You cannot leave the gas on, Darius, because there is no gas to leave on. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Officer Miller leaned down and looked into the cabinet. He saw the capped pipe. He saw the heavy-duty electrical cord plugged into a special outlet. He stood up and looked at Darius. "You said you came over here at 3 in the morning and smelled gas," the officer said. His voice was no longer sympathetic. It was suspicious. Darius's face turned a shade of red that clashed with his tie. I smelled something burning. Maybe it was the wiring. He is old. He messes with the wires. "It is induction," Mrs. Gable said, tapping her pen against her clipboard. "If there is no pot on the burner, it does not generate heat. You literally cannot leave it on by accident. It has an automatic shut-off safety feature. It is the safest stove on the market." She looked at Darius with eyes that had seen too many family disputes. "Sir, did you actually come here last night?" "Of course I did," Darius stammered. He was sweating now. The script was falling apart. He forgot. He imagined it. That is the dementia. He hallucinates fires. That proves he is sick. I reached into a drawer. I pulled out a manila folder. "Actually," I said, handing the folder to Mrs. Gable, "since we are discussing my mental health, I thought you might want to see this." She opened the folder. Inside was a comprehensive medical report dated yesterday. It was from Dr. Sterling, the best neurologist in the state. Not the doctor Darius had tried to bribe, but a specialist I had seen privately. "What is this?" she asked, scanning the pages. "It is a full cognitive assessment," I said. "I go for a checkup every 6 months. As you can see on page 3, my MMSE score is 30 out of 30. Perfect cognitive function. No signs of dementia. No signs of Alzheimer's. My blood work is excellent. My blood pressure is 120/80. Mrs. Gable read the report. She flipped to the back page where the doctor had written a summary. "Mr. Jefferson is in peak physical and mental condition for his age. He is fully capable of making his own financial and medical decisions." She closed the folder and looked at Darius. "Mr. Jefferson, your father seems to be in better health than most people half his age. You filed a sworn affidavit stating that he was incoherent and unable to recognize you. You stated he was a danger to the public. He has good days and bad days." Darius argued, his voice rising in pitch. "He is manipulating you. He is a good actor." Officer Miller stepped forward. He put a hand on his belt near his handcuffs. "Sir, filing a false police report is a crime. Wasting resources is a crime. We came here prepared to take an elderly man into protective custody based on your word. But what I see here is a man who knows exactly what kind of stove he owns and has medical proof of his sanity." Darius looked around the kitchen like a trapped rat. He looked at me. He expected to see the confused father he could bully. Instead, he saw Solomon. He saw the man who negotiated contracts with union bosses who threatened to break his knees. He saw the man who stared them down until they blinked. I looked at my son. I felt a profound sadness, but it was buried deep under layers of resolve. "Darius," I said softly, "maybe you are the one who is confused. Stress can do terrible things to a man's memory. Maybe you dreamed about the gas." I gave him an out, a tiny sliver of an exit. I wanted to see if he would take it. I wanted to see if he would retreat and regroup, or if he would double down on his stupidity. Darius glared at me. There was hate in his eyes, pure, unadulterated hate. "You think you are so smart," he hissed. "You think you can hide this forever. You belong in a home." Officer Miller took Darius by the arm. "Okay, sir, that is enough. We are leaving, and I suggest you do not call us again unless there is an actual emergency. If I have to come back here because you made up another story, I am going to arrest you for harassment. Do you understand me?" Darius jerked his arm away. "Fine. Fine. Leave him here. Let him rot. But when he burns this place down, do not say, 'I did not warn you.'" He stormed out of the house, slamming the front door so hard the windows rattled. Mrs. Gable sighed. She handed me back the medical report. "I am sorry for the disturbance, Mr. Jefferson. Family disputes over. Care can be difficult. We see this sometimes. Children get anxious about their inheritance." She knew. She had seen it 1,000 times. "Thank you for your diligence, Mrs. Gable," I said. "I know you are just doing your job." She paused at the door. Mr. Jefferson, if you ever feel unsafe, if you feel like you are being pressured or threatened, please call us. We protect the elderly from their families too, not just from themselves. I will keep that in mind, I said. She left. Officer Miller tipped his hat and followed her. I stood in the silence of my kitchen. I looked at my reflection in the black glass of the induction stove. I looked old. My hair was white. My skin was wrinkled. But the reflection did not show the bank accounts. It did not show the deeds to the warehouses. It did not show the sheer force of will that had kept me alive and successful for 7 decades. Darius had tried to use the law as a weapon. He had tried to use the state to break me. He thought he was calling the police on a helpless old man. He did not realize he was calling the police on a man who had prepared for this battle before Darius was even born. I walked to the window and watched them drive away. Darius was sitting in his car screaming at the steering wheel. He was hitting the dashboard. He was a child throwing a tantrum because he could not steal the candy. He did not know it yet, but this was just the first humiliation. He had walked into my house trying to take my freedom. He left with a warning from the police and a permanent mark on his record with social services. I picked up my phone and dialed Aisha. They took the bait, I said. He tried the incompetence angle. The police shut him down. Good, Aisha replied. That blocks his legal avenue for guardianship. He cannot file again without significant new evidence. He is checkmated on the medical front. Now we move to the next phase, I said. What is the next phase, Solomon? I looked around my house. I looked at the pictures of Zola on the fridge. He thinks he is broke now, I said. He thinks he is desperate. Wait until he realizes he cannot even afford to turn on the lights. Cut them off, Aisha. Cut everything off. The electricity, the water, the car insurance, every bill I have been paying secretly for 10 years. Cancel the auto pay. Today. Are you sure, Solomon? Zola is in that house. Zola is resilient, I said, my voice hardening. And if it gets too cold, she knows where Grandpa lives. But Darius needs to learn that the lights do not stay on by magic. They stay on because a man pays the bill, and his credit just ran out. I hung up the phone. I poured the rest of my tea down the sink. It was cold, just like my heart was beginning to feel. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now I just had to wait for the snap. 2 days after the police left my kitchen, the silence in my life was broken by the sweet sound of a ringtone. I had been waiting for this call. I sat in my favorite armchair, a cup of fresh coffee in my hand, watching the birds fight over the feeder in the yard. On the table next to me lay a stack of confirmation emails printed out by Aisha. Dominion Energy Service canceled. City Water Service suspended. Geico auto insurance policy terminated due to non-payment. Verizon Fios disconnected. For 10 years, I had been the invisible engine keeping their lifestyle running. I set up automatic payments from a shell account the day Darius moved into that house. They never saw a bill. They never wrote a check. They just lived. They assumed electricity was a natural right like air. They assumed water just flowed because they were special. They forgot that in this world nothing flows unless someone opens the valve. And I had just welded the valve shut. The phone buzzed again. It was Tiffany. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to sit in the dark for just a few more seconds. Finally, I picked up. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice light and airy. "Solomon." "What did you do?" Tiffany screeched. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She launched right into the assault. The background noise was chaos. I heard Darius shouting something about the fuse box. I heard Zola crying because her iPad wouldn't load cartoons. "I am having a lovely morning, Tiffany," I replied. "Thank you for asking. How are you?" "Don't play games with me, old man," she yelled. "The power is out. The TV shut off right in the middle of my show. The refrigerator is warming up. All my organic salmon is going to spoil. And the water, I was in the shower. Solomon, I have shampoo in my hair and the water just stopped. It dried up." I took a sip of coffee. It tasted exceptionally good today. "That sounds very inconvenient," I said. "Have you called the utility company? Maybe there is an outage in the neighborhood." "There is no outage," she screamed. "I called them. They said the account was closed. Closed. Solomon, they said the subscriber terminated the service. You pay the bills. Why did you stop?" I leaned back in my chair. "I pay the bills," I asked, feigning confusion. "But Tiffany, you and Darius are successful investors. You are closing crypto deals. You are buying designer handbags. Surely you pay your own electric bill. Why would a poor senile old man be paying for the utilities of a wealthy couple? There was a silence on the line. A heavy, suffocating silence. She knew. She knew that I knew. She knew that for years they had allowed me to subsidize their life while mocking my truck and my clothes. We just thought you wanted to help, she stammered, her voice dropping an octave. You know things are tight right now with the investments. We just need you to turn it back on, just for a month, until the deal closes. There is no deal, Tiffany, I said, my voice turning cold. There are no investments. There is only gambling debt and credit card bills. And as for the utilities, I did not forget to pay them. I canceled them, permanently. You can't do that, she shrieked. We have a child. You are leaving your granddaughter in the dark. Zola is welcome at my house any time, I said firmly. My lights are on, my fridge is full, my water is hot. If you bring her here, I will feed her and let her watch cartoons. But not you, and not Darius. You two are adults. Adults pay their own bills. The car insurance, Darius's voice suddenly roared through the speaker. He must have snatched the phone from her. Dad, I just got an email from Geico. You canceled the insurance on the Rover. I can't drive it without insurance. It's leased. If they find out the insurance lapsed, they will repo the car. Then I suggest you don't drive it, I said. Or better yet, sell it. That Rover costs $1,200 a month. That is a lot of electricity, Darius. You could keep the lights on for a year with one car payment. You are trying to ruin us, Darius hissed. You are doing this on purpose. You are a bitter, jealous old man. I am not ruining you, son, I replied. I am liberating you. You wanted to be independent. You wanted to sell my house because you said I couldn't manage my own affairs. Well, now you have the opportunity to manage yours. Show me how smart you are. Show me how successful you are. Turn the lights back on, Darius. Use your own money. We don't have the money, he screamed. You know we don't. Then get a job, I said. A real one, not a hustle, not a scheme. Go work at the car wash. Go work at the warehouse. Do what I did. Sweat for it. I will sue you, Tiffany yelled from the background. I will sue you for child endangerment. Go ahead, I challenged them. Call the police again. Tell them your father stopped paying your bills because you tried to have him committed. See how much sympathy you get. And while you are at it, tell them about the gambling debt. I am sure the judge will be very interested in where your money really goes. I heard a crash on the other end. It sounded like a vase hitting the wall. We are coming over there, Darius threatened. We are coming to settle this. Come, I said. But remember, my security system is paid for, and yours is about to be disconnected. I hung up the phone. I did not turn it off this time. I blocked their number. I wanted peace. I walked to the window and looked down the street. I couldn't see their house from here, but I could imagine it. I imagined the silent television. I imagined the warm refrigerator. I imagined the darkness creeping into the corners as the sun went down. For the first time in his life, Darius was going to feel the cold. He was going to know what it meant to reach for a switch and have nothing happen. He was going to realize that the world owes him nothing. Later that afternoon, I got a text from a neighbor who lived across from them. It was a picture. Darius and Tiffany were dragging their 65-inch flat-screen TV out to the curb. There was a handwritten sign taped to it. For sale, cash only. I zoomed in on the photo. Tiffany was crying. She was holding a Louis Vuitton bag that I knew she was about to sell next. Darius looked defeated. He was arguing with a man who had stopped his truck to look at the TV. They were haggling over $50. I smiled. It was a small victory, but it was sweet. They were learning. They were beginning to understand the basic law of economics that I had tried to teach them for decades. You cannot spend what you do not have. I went to the kitchen and started preparing dinner. I made a pot of stew with fresh vegetables and beef. The smell filled the warm, brightly lit kitchen. I set a place for Zola just in case. I knew they wouldn't bring her tonight. Their pride was still too strong. But soon the hunger would outweigh the pride. Soon the darkness would be too much. And when they finally broke, when they finally realized they could not survive on arrogance alone, I would be waiting. Not with a checkbook, but with a lesson. I sat down to eat alone. The house was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet. It wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of a fortress that had raised its drawbridge. The enemy was outside in the cold, and for the first time in 40 years I wasn't going to lower the bridge to save them. I took a spoonful of stew. It needed a little more salt, but otherwise it was perfect. The milk bottle was broken. The baby was going to have to learn to hunt or starve. I parked my truck 2 blocks from my own house and waited. I knew the desperation would drive him to do something stupid. Desperate men do not think. They react. When the money runs out, an entitled man does not look for a job. He looks for a victim. I became that victim on a Tuesday morning. I made sure to leave the house at 9 o'clock sharp. I drove my truck to the coffee shop around the corner and parked where I had a clear signal on my tablet. I had upgraded the security system inside my home 2 days ago. High-definition cameras with audio hidden in the smoke detectors and the bookshelves. I sat there sipping black coffee, watching the screen, waiting for my son to break my heart one last time. It did not take long. At 9:30, a hooded figure approached my back door. He looked around nervously. It was Darius. He did not even try to pick the lock. He wrapped his elbow in his jacket and smashed the glass pane of the kitchen door. The sound of shattering glass played through my headphones. It was the sound of the final barrier between us breaking. He reached in, unlocked the door, and stepped into the home where he had taken his first steps. He did not walk with reverence. He walked with rage. "Where is it?" he muttered to himself, tearing open the kitchen drawers. "Where is the cash, old man?" He dumped my silverware onto the floor. He swept my jars of spices off the counter. He was looking for the coffee can. The mythical coffee can that all poor old folks are supposed to keep their life savings in. He thought I was a stereotype. He was about to find out I was a ghost. He moved to the living room. He pulled the cushions off the sofa and slashed them with a box cutter he had brought from his pocket. Feathers flew into the air like snow. He knocked over the lamp that Beatrice had bought for our 10th anniversary. It shattered into 100 pieces. I flinched watching the screen, but I did not look away. I needed to see this. I needed to burn this image into my mind so I would never waver again. He stormed into my bedroom. He went straight for the closet. He threw my flannel shirts on the floor, stomping on them with his muddy boots. He found the old metal lockbox on the top shelf. His eyes lit up. He thought he had found the gold. He took the box cutter and pried the lock open, breathing heavy and fast. I zoomed in on the camera feed. I knew what was in that box. There was no money. There were no bearer bonds. Inside that box was a leather-bound ledger from 1995. It was the logbook from my first year of business. It recorded every 18-hour shift, every skipped meal, every dollar I scraped together to pay for his private tutor. It was the proof of my sacrifice. Darius dumped the contents onto the bed. The ledger fell out along with a few old photographs of him as a boy. He picked up the book, shook it, waiting for cash to fall out. When nothing did, he roared in frustration. He threw the book against the wall. "Trash!" he screamed. "Just worthless trash!" He stood there in the wreckage of my bedroom, panting. He looked at the photos on the bed, a picture of him catching his first fish, a picture of his graduation. He stared at them for a second, and I held my breath, hoping to see a flicker of remorse. Instead, he spat on them. He spat on the memory of us. I had seen enough. I closed the tablet. My hands were steady. My heart was cold. Darius worked for a high-end real estate brokerage, Prestige Realty. They sold luxury homes to the city's elite. Their entire brand was built on trust, integrity, and security. They gave their agents keys to multi-million-dollar mansions. They trusted their agents with the alarm codes of wealthy clients. I opened my email app. I attached the video file of Darius breaking the window. I attached the video of him slashing my sofa with a box cutter. I attached the audio of him screaming obscenities while destroying property. In the subject line, I typed simple words: employee conduct concern regarding Darius Jefferson. I sent it to the owner of the brokerage, Mr. Henderson. I knew Henderson. He was a man who valued reputation above all else. I finished my coffee and drove to the Prestige Realty office. I parked across the street and waited. It was cruel, perhaps, to watch, but I needed to see the consequences land. I needed to witness the moment reality crashed into Darius's fantasy world. An hour later, Darius pulled up in his leased Range Rover. He walked into the office, adjusting his tie, trying to look like the successful businessman he pretended to be. He had no idea that the digital evidence of his crime had arrived before him. He walked in with a swagger. He probably thought he would steal a few leads or maybe try to get an advance on a commission he hadn't earned. 20 minutes passed. Then the glass doors of the office building opened. 2 security guards were escorting Darius out. He was not swaggering anymore. He was shouting. He was pointing back at the building. He was holding a cardboard box filled with his personal items. Mr. Henderson stood in the doorway, arms crossed, shaking his head. He said something brief and final, then turned his back and walked away. Darius stood on the sidewalk. He looked at the closed doors. He looked at his box of stuff. He threw the box into the gutter. Papers and staplers scattered across the pavement. He kicked the tire of his Range Rover. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. I saw him screaming into the device. "It is a setup," he yelled. "My dad is crazy. He doctored the footage. You cannot fire me. I am your top earner." A lie. He was their lowest performer. He hadn't sold a house in 6 months. He hung up and slumped against the car. He slid down until he was sitting on the dirty concrete. He put his head in his hands. He looked small. He looked defeated. But he did not look sorry. He looked like a man who was angry that he got caught. I watched him for a long time. I watched him pull a flask from his jacket pocket and take a long swig. It was barely noon. He was drinking away the pain of his own actions. He was blaming the world. He was blaming his boss. He was blaming me. He would never look in the mirror and see the thief. He would only see the victim. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Jefferson, thank you for bringing this to my attention. We have zero tolerance for criminal behavior. Darius has been terminated effective immediately. We will also be notifying the licensing board. I am terribly sorry for what you are going through." I deleted the email. I did not want his pity. I wanted justice. I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the curb. I drove past Darius. He did not see me. He was too busy staring at the bottom of his flask. I felt a pang of grief for the little boy who used to wait by the window for me to come home from work. But that boy was gone. In his place was a stranger who broke windows and spat on memories. I drove to the hardware store. I needed to buy plywood to board up my back door. I needed to buy a new lamp. I needed to clean up the mess he made. But the mess in his life was something I could no longer clean up. He had lost his job. He had lost his reputation. And he was about to lose his house. The slide had begun. He was picking up speed. And there was no safety net at the bottom. Only the hard, cold ground of reality. I turned on the radio. A blues song was playing. It felt appropriate. I hummed along as I drove, feeling the weight of the morning settle on my shoulders. It was a heavy burden to break your own son, but it was a necessary one. He wanted to take my fortune. He just found out that the first thing I was going to take was his pride, and I was just getting started. Saturday morning arrived with a gray sky and a biting wind. It was Zola's 8th birthday. In any normal family, the house would be smelling of pancakes and echoing with the sound of wrapping paper being torn. But as I pulled my truck up to the curb of my son's house, there was only silence. The windows were dark because I had cut the power. The lawn was littered with the debris of their desperation. A for sale sign planted by Darius in a manic attempt to liquidate assets he did not own lay face down in the dirt where I had kicked it over the night before. I walked to the front door carrying a small purple gift bag. I knocked. It took a long time for anyone to answer. Finally, the door cracked open. Tiffany stood there. She looked like a ghost. Her hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy knot. She was wearing a silk robe that was stained with coffee. Her eyes were red and puffy. The house behind her was cold and shadowy. "What do you want, Solomon?" she spat. Her voice was hoarse. "You have done enough. We are freezing in here. We have no hot water. You ruined her birthday." "I did not ruin anything, Tiffany," I said, my voice calm and deep, like a river bottom. "You ruined it when you spent the cake money on a lease payment for a car you cannot drive. I am here to pick up my granddaughter. I promised her a day out." "You are not taking her anywhere," she hissed, trying to block the doorway with her small frame. "You want to take her to some cheap diner? You want to drag her around in that dirty truck so she can smell like a laborer? She is traumatized enough. She does not need to be infected by your poverty, infected by my poverty." The words hung in the cold air. She truly believed it. She truly believed that dignity was a disease and that debt was a virtue. Zola appeared behind her mother in the hallway. She was wearing her coat and a wool hat inside the house because it was 50 degrees in the living room. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Grandpa," she cried out, pushing past her mother. "Zola, get back inside," Tiffany shouted, grabbing the girl's arm. "You are not going with him. He is crazy. He is dangerous." I stepped forward. I did not raise my hand. I did not raise my voice. I simply occupied the space. I towered over Tiffany. I looked down at her with the weight of 40 years of command. "Let go of her arm, Tiffany," I said. It was not a request. It was an order. Tiffany flinched. She looked at my eyes and saw something that terrified her. She saw the man who had fired incompetent managers without blinking. She saw the man who had stared down bankruptcy in '89 and won. She let go. "Go to the truck, Zola," I said gently. Zola ran past me and scrambled into the passenger seat of the Ford. I looked at Tiffany one last time. "I will bring her back after dinner," I said. "Try to find a candle. It gets dark early tonight." I turned and walked away. Tiffany slammed the door, screaming obscenities that faded into the wind. I got into the truck. Zola was shivering. I turned the heater up to full blast. "I am sorry, Grandpa," she whispered, looking at her hands. "Mommy and Daddy are fighting a lot. Daddy is crying in the bathroom. He says it is your fault." "It is not my fault, baby girl," I said, putting the truck in gear. "And it is certainly not yours. Sometimes adults make big messes and they look for someone else to clean them up. But today is your birthday, and we are not going to think about messes. We are going to see something special." "Are we going to the park?" she asked. "No," I said, steering the truck toward the highway. "We are going to see where Grandpa really works." We drove for 30 minutes. We left the suburbs behind. We drove past the city center and into the industrial district. This was a world of concrete and steel, of chain-link fences and high-voltage lines. Zola looked out the window confused. This was not a place for children. It was a place for machines. We pulled up to a massive security gate flanked by concrete barriers. A sign spanning the entrance read, "Jefferson Logistics and Freight," in bold blue letters. The guard booth was manned by a large man in a uniform. When he saw my battered truck approaching, he did not wave me away. He stood up straight. He stepped out of the booth and saluted. "Morning, Mr. J." The guard boomed, pressing a button. The heavy steel gates rolled back with a mechanical hum. "Morning." "Mike." I waved. Zola looked at me, her eyes wide. "He knows you, Grandpa." "He works for me, Zola," I said. I drove through the gates. The facility opened up before us like a city of steel. It stretched for 50 acres. To the left were the warehouses, massive structures that could hold football stadiums inside them. To the right was the fleet yard. I parked the truck on a small rise overlooking the yard. I turned off the engine. "Look, Zola," I said, pointing through the windshield. Below us, lined up in perfect rows, were 400 semi-trucks. They were gleaming white with the blue Jefferson logo emblazoned on the sides. They looked like a sleeping army. Men in high-visibility vests moved between them, checking tires, fueling tanks, logging manifests. Forklifts buzzed around the loading docks like busy bees. The air smelled of diesel and grease and commerce. It was the smell of my life. "What is this place?" Zola whispered, pressing her face against the glass. "This is my company," I said. "Your company?" she asked, turning to look at me. "But Mommy says you worked at the post office. She says you are poor." "Mommy is wrong," I said softly. I opened the door. "Come on. I want to show you something." We got out. The wind was brisk, but Zola didn't seem to notice. I took her hand and we walked toward the main terminal. Every worker we passed stopped what they were doing. They took off their hard hats. They nodded respectfully. "Hello, Mr. Jefferson." "Good to see you, sir." "Happy Saturday, boss." These were tough men, men with calloused hands and grease under their fingernails. They did not respect money. They respected grit. They knew I could drive every truck in that lot. They knew I could strip an engine and rebuild it blindfolded. They respected me because I was one of them who made it. We walked up the metal stairs to the catwalk that ran above the main distribution floor. Below us, a complex system of conveyor belts moved boxes and pallets in a mesmerizing dance. Packages were being sorted, scanned, and loaded onto trucks bound for Chicago, New York, Miami. I lifted Zola up so she could see over the railing. "You see all those boxes, Zola?" I asked. "Yes, Grandpa. There are millions of them. Every one of those boxes is a promise," I told her. "Someone promised to send something and someone is waiting to receive it. My job is to keep that promise. It is hard work. It is noisy. It is dirty. But it is important." I pointed to a massive map on the wall of the control room. It showed the United States covered in blue lines tracking the real-time movement of my fleet. "See those lights?" I said. "Those are our trucks. We keep the country moving. We bring food to grocery stores. We bring medicine to hospitals. We bring toys to toy stores." Zola looked at the map, then back at the floor, then at me. "You own all the trucks, Grandpa. I own every tire, every bolt, and every gallon of fuel," I said. "Then why do you drive the old truck?" she asked, the innocence of her question cutting through the air. "Why do you wear the flannel shirt Mommy says rich people wear suits?" I set her down and knelt in front of her, ignoring the pain in my knees. I took her small hands in mine. Because Zola, a suit does not drive a truck. A fancy car does not load a pallet. I wear these clothes because I never want to forget where I came from. I drive that truck because it reminds me of the days when your grandmother Beatrice and I had nothing but a dream and a full tank of gas. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. This was the gift I had brought to the party. The gift Tiffany had tried to keep me from giving. "Open it," I said. She opened the box. Inside was a simple silver locket. She opened the locket. On one side was a picture of her grandmother Beatrice. On the other side was a picture of me and Zola when she was a baby. "This was your grandmother's," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "She helped me build this place. She did the accounting at the kitchen table while I drove the night shifts. We built this for our family. We built it for your father." I looked out at the fleet, feeling the familiar ache of disappointment. "Your father got lost, Zola. He thought the money was the important part. He forgot about the work. He forgot about the promise. He thinks being rich means spending money, but being rich means having the power to take care of people, and he forgot how to take care of people." I closed her small fingers around the locket. This company, this empire of steel and wheels, it was supposed to be his. "But now I am saving it for you." "For me," she whispered. "Yes," I said, "but not to buy fancy bags, not to look down on people. I am saving it for you so that you never have to be afraid, so that you never have to let anyone treat you badly because you need their help. I want you to learn how this works. I want you to learn how to drive the forklift. I want you to learn how to read the manifest. I want you to be strong." "Can I really drive a forklift?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "When you are 16, I laughed. But today we can sit in the big rig." I took her down to the yard. I opened the door of a brand new Kenworth T680. It was a monster of a machine shining with chrome. I lifted her into the driver's seat. She gripped the steering wheel, which was bigger than her whole body. She beamed. She looked powerful. She looked like a Jefferson. I climbed into the passenger seat. I looked at her sitting there in her coat and hat, surrounded by $80 million of equity, and I felt a fierce surge of protection. Darius and Tiffany saw a meal ticket. I saw a legacy. They wanted to strip the copper wiring out of the walls for a quick fix. I wanted to build a foundation that would last 100 years. We sat there for a long time, watching the sun begin to set over the industrial park, turning the white trucks into gold. We ate sandwiches I had bought from the vending machine in the break room. Ham and cheese on white bread. Zola ate it like it was filet mignon. "Grandpa," she said, chewing thoughtfully, "Mommy said you were going to the warehouse. Is this the warehouse?" I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. "Yes, baby girl, this is the warehouse. But they got one thing wrong. What I am not being sent here to be forgotten," I said, looking out at my kingdom. "I am the one who runs it." We drove back to the suburbs in the dark. Zola fell asleep against my arm, clutching the locket. I felt the weight of her trust. I felt the weight of the secret I had revealed. She knew now. She knew that her grandfather was not a victim. She knew there was power in the silence. When I pulled up to the dark house, I did not feel sadness anymore. I felt resolve. I carried Zola to the door. I knocked. Darius opened it holding a flashlight. He looked haggard. He looked small. "Here is your daughter," I said, handing over the sleeping child. "She has eaten. She has a candle in her pocket for her room." Darius looked at me, then at the truck, then back at me. He wanted to say something nasty. He wanted to lash out, but he was too tired. He was too cold. "Thanks," he muttered. I walked back to my truck. I did not tell him where we had been. I did not tell him what she had seen. Let him think we went to a park. Let him think I am just an old man with a beat-up Ford. The surprise was coming, and it was going to hit him harder than an 18-wheeler with no brakes. Monday morning broke with a sky the color of a bruised plum. I sat in my office at the top of the Skyline Tower, watching the city wake up through the rain-streaked glass. On the desk in front of me sat a secure tablet connected to the cameras I had installed in my son's house. I was not drinking coffee this morning. I was drinking water. My stomach was tight. Today was the day the hammer fell. Today was the day Nemesis Holdings introduced itself to the Jefferson family. Nemesis. In Greek mythology, she was the goddess who punished arrogance. She was the one who leveled the playing field when mortals flew too high. It was a fitting name for the shell company I had established 48 hours ago. Through Nemesis, I had purchased every single cent of Darius and Tiffany S. debt. I owned their second mortgage. I owned their maxed-out credit cards. I owned the personal loans Darius had taken from shady online lenders. I owned the air they breathed. I watched the screen. Their house was dark because I had cut the power. They were huddled in the kitchen wrapped in blankets. Darius was pacing the floor by the light of a battery-powered lantern. He looked like a man who had not slept in days. His eyes were wild. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Tiffany was sitting at the table, frantically scrolling through her phone, probably trying to find a pawn shop that opened at 8 a.m. At 9 o'clock sharp, a black sedan pulled into their driveway. It was not a police car. It was something much more terrifying to people like them. It was a Mercedes S-Class with tinted windows. Aisha Reynolds stepped out. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit that cost more than Tiffany S.'s wedding dress. She carried a single leather briefcase. She did not knock. She rang the doorbell knowing full well it would not work without electricity. Then she hammered on the wood with a confident fist. I turned up the volume on my tablet. Darius opened the door. "Who are you?" he barked, trying to muster some of his lost arrogance. "Mr. Darius Jefferson," Aisha asked, her voice cutting through the morning air like a knife. "Yeah, who is asking? My name is Aisha Reynolds. I am the lead counsel for Nemesis Holdings. We are the new holders of your mortgage note, as well as your consolidated unsecured debt obligations. May I come in?" Darius froze. He looked back at Tiffany. Panic flickered across his face. He did not know the name Nemesis Holdings, but he knew the word debt. He stepped aside. Aisha walked into the cold, dark house. She did not look around with disgust. She looked around with the appraising eye of an executioner. She placed her briefcase on the kitchen table right next to the empty cereal bowls. "What is this about?" Tiffany demanded, pulling her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Who are you people?" "We are your creditors," Aisha said simply, opening the briefcase. She pulled out a thick stack of documents bound in red legal tape. "As of this morning, Nemesis Holdings has acquired the rights to your outstanding liabilities totaling $284,000. This includes the $150,000 second mortgage on this property, the $80,000 in credit card debt, and the $54,000 in personal loans." Darius laughed. It was a dry, hysterical sound. "You bought our debt. Why? We are broke, lady. You made a bad investment." Aisha did not smile. "We specialize in distressed asset recovery, Mr. Jefferson. We do not make bad investments. We make liquidations." She slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a demand for payment in full, per the terms of the acceleration clauses in your mortgage and credit agreements. Nemesis Holdings is exercising its right to call the loans due immediately based on your default status and the degradation of the collateral. You have 7 days to pay the full balance of $284,000. 7 days, Darius screamed. "Are you insane? We cannot pay that in 7 years. If payment is not received by close of business." Next Monday, Aisha continued, ignoring his outburst. "We will initiate immediate foreclosure proceedings on this home. We will also move to garnish any future wages and seize any personal property of value to satisfy the remaining balance." "This is harassment," Tiffany yelled, standing up. "You cannot do this. We have rights. We have a child. Your rights ended when you stopped paying your bills 6 months ago," Aisha said coldly. "And as for your child, I suggest you find suitable housing arrangements before the sheriff arrives to evict you. You have 7 days. Aisha closed her briefcase. She turned and walked out without another word. She did not look back. She got in her car and drove away, leaving a vacuum of silence in her wake. I watched them on the screen. For a full minute, neither of them moved. Then the explosion happened. Darius swiped the papers off the table. 7 days, he roared, kicking a chair. "Who the hell is Nemesis Holdings? How did they find us?" "It does not matter who they are," Tiffany hissed, her face twisting into something ugly and desperate. "They are going to take the house, Darius. They are going to put us on the street. We have nothing. We sold the TV. We sold my bags. We have nothing left." Darius sank to the floor, his back against the cabinets. He put his head in his hands. "It is over, Tiff. It is over. I am going to jail. The loan sharks are going to find me. Now this corporation wants my blood." Tiffany looked at him with contempt. "Get up, you coward. It is not over." She walked to the window and looked out. Her eyes fell on something in the driveway. I switched camera views. She was staring at the street where my truck usually parked when I visited. But I wasn't there. "We still have one asset," she whispered. "What are you talking about?" Darius moaned. "The old man," she said, turning back to him. Her eyes were bright with a dangerous manic energy. "He has the house. It is fully paid off. It is worth $400,000. He wanted to sign," Tiffany Darius said. "You saw him with the police. He played them. He is stubborn. He does not have to sign," she said. Her voice dropped low. "Who is going to know Darius? Who cares about a senile old man living alone? We have his social security number. We have his birth certificate from when you tried to get the insurance." Darius looked up. "What are you saying?" "I am saying we do not need him to agree," she said. "We need a notary who does not ask questions. I know a guy from your old real estate office. Paul. He lost his license for backdating documents. He will do anything for $5,000. "We do not have $5,000, Darius said. "We have the truck," she said, pointing out the window. "Not my truck." She was pointing at the spot where my 1998 Ford usually sat. "That old Ford he drives. It is a classic now. Collectors pay cash for those bodies. We sell the truck to a chop shop today. We get the cash. We pay Paul. We forge the deed transfer on Solomon S. house. We take the deed to the bank tomorrow and take out an emergency equity loan. We pay off Nemesis. We save our house." Darius stood up slowly. "Forge the deed. That is a felony, Tiffany. That is prison time. Being homeless is worse than prison," she spat at him. "And besides, who is going to catch us?" "Solomon. He thinks the microwave is a television. He won't even know the house is sold until the new owners show up. By then we will be gone." I watched my son. I watched the man I raised with honor and discipline. I watched him weigh the choice between hard work and a crime. It took him exactly 5 seconds. "Do it," he said. "Call Paul. But we need the truck first. Do you have the spare key?" "I have it," Tiffany said, smiling. I sat back in my office chair. My heart felt like a heavy stone sinking in deep water. They were going to steal my truck, my beloved Ford, the truck I bought the year I retired from active driving, the truck that had carried Zola to her first day of school. They were going to chop it up for parts to pay a crooked notary to steal my home. I picked up my phone. I called the head of security at Jefferson Logistics. "Mike," I said. "Yes, Mr. J. I need you to locate my personal vehicle. It is parked 2 blocks from my son S. house. I want you to disable the GPS tracker notification but keep the location active. Let them take it." "Let them take it, sir?" Mike asked, confused. "Yes," I said. "Let them take it. And Mike, contact the bank manager at First National. Tell him my son might be coming in with some very interesting paperwork tomorrow. Tell him to play along. Tell him to stall." "Understood, sir." I hung up. I looked at the screen one last time. Darius and Tiffany were hugging. They looked relieved. They looked like they had just solved all their problems. They had no idea they had just signed their own death warrants. They were not just fighting a father anymore. They were fighting Nemesis, and Nemesis does not forgive. "You want to play criminal?" Darius the First whispered to the screen. "Fine, but you forgot one thing. You are playing in my city, and I own the board." I stood up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The city below was gray and steel. I felt a cold resolve settle over me. They were going to commit a felony. They were going to cross the line from ungrateful children to actual criminals, and I was going to let them do it. I was going to hand them the rope, the chair, and the instructions on how to tie the knot. 7 days, Aisha had said. They wouldn't last 2. Tuesday morning arrived with the heaviness of a funeral procession. I sat in my high-rise office watching the rain streak against the glass. On my desk lay a report from Mike, my head of security. The 1998 Ford pickup was gone. Darius and Tiffany had towed it in the middle of the night. They sold it to a chop shop in the industrial district for $4,000. That was the price of their dignity. $4,000 for the vehicle that had carried my son to baseball practice and my granddaughter to the hospital when she was born. They took that cash and drove straight to the house of Paul the forger. They bought a fake deed. They bought a lie. And now Darius was walking into First National Bank to try and cash it. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Vance. He was the branch manager of First National. We had done business for 30 years. He was the man who approved my first loan for a fleet of 5 trucks when everyone else said I was too high risk. He knew me. He knew my signature. And he knew exactly what was about to walk through his door. He is here. Solomon. Mr. Vance said, his voice low. He just walked in. He is wearing a suit that looks like he slept in it. He is sweating profusely. Let him play his hand, I said, leaning back in my leather chair. I want to hear it. Mr. Vance left the line open. I put the phone on speaker and closed my eyes, visualizing the scene. I knew the lobby of that bank better than my own living room. The marble floors, the high ceilings, the echo of commerce. I heard Darius S.'s voice. It was loud, too loud for a bank. It was the voice of a man trying to project confidence while his insides were turning to water. I need to speak to a loan officer immediately, Darius announced. I have an urgent transaction. An equity line of credit against a property. $400,000. I heard the click of heels. A junior officer, likely. Sir, do you have an appointment? I do not need an appointment, Darius snapped. I am Darius Jefferson. My father is Solomon Jefferson. He banks here. I am taking over his assets. I heard Mr. Vance's footsteps approaching. Good morning, Mr. Jefferson. I am the branch manager. Please come into my office. There was a rustle of fabric as Darius sat down. I could hear him breathing. Short, shallow breaths. The sound of a man running out of time. Here is the deed, Darius said, slapping a paper onto the desk. My father transferred the title of his home to me yesterday. He is moving into a care facility. His health is failing. I need to leverage the equity immediately to handle his medical expenses. I listened. The silence stretched out. I knew what Vance was doing. He was putting on his reading glasses. He was inspecting the seal. He was looking at the signature. This signature looks a bit irregular, Mr. Vance said calmly. It does not match the specimen we have on file for your father. He is old, Darius said quickly, his voice rising in pitch. His hands shake. He has tremors. You know how it is. But he signed it. I was there. The notary was there. It is legal. I see, Mr. Vance said. And you need this money today? Yes. Today. Wire transfer. I have the routing number for the care facility. That was a lie. The routing number would be for his offshore gambling account or to pay off the loan sharks. Mr. Vance cleared his throat. Well, Mr. Jefferson, given the amount and the irregularity of the signature, standard protocol requires a verbal verification with the grantor. Verification, Darius stammered. He does not have a phone. He is confused. He won't understand what you are asking. I have his number right here, Mr. Vance said. Let us give him a call. No, Darius shouted. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor echoed through the speaker. You do not understand. He is senile. He gets agitated. Mr. Vance ignored him. I heard the ringing tone. My office phone lit up. I picked it up. Hello, I said, my voice strong and clear. This is Solomon Jefferson. Darius gasped. It was a wet, choking sound. Mr. Jefferson, this is Robert Vance at First National, Mr. Vance said. I have your son Darius here. He has presented a deed transfer for your property at 452 Oak Street. He claims you signed it yesterday and that you are moving into a care facility. He is requesting an equity line of credit for $400,000. Can you verify this transaction? I let the silence hang for 5 seconds. 5 seconds for Darius to pray. 5 seconds for him to realize that the ice he was standing on had just cracked. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice cold as the grave, I am currently in my office at Jefferson Logistics. I did not sign any deed. I am not moving to a facility. And if my son has a document with my signature on it, then that document is a forgery. The sound Darius made was not human. It was the sound of a wounded animal. Dad, he whispered. Dad, why are you doing this? Mr. Vance. I continued, ignoring my son, whimper. Is he still in your office? Yes, sir, he is. Does he still have the document in his possession? He does. Then I suggest you confiscate it as evidence of attempted fraud. And Mr. Vance, please ask my son if he wants you to call the police, or if he would prefer to leave the premises under his own power. I heard Mr. Vance relay the message. Mr. Jefferson, your father has confirmed this is a fraudulent transaction. I am keeping this deed. Now you can leave, or I can press the silent alarm under my desk. The police station is 2 blocks away. They can be here in 3 minutes. You set me up, Darius screamed. You set me up, old man. You are ruining my life. Get out, Mr. Vance ordered, his voice losing its professional polish. "Get out of my bank before I have you thrown out." I heard the door slam. I heard Darius shouting in the lobby. "Everyone look at this. My father is a liar. He is trying to starve his own family." "Security," Mr. Vance shouted. There was a scuffle, the sound of a body hitting the floor, then the heavy doors of the bank opening and closing. Mr. Vance came back to the phone. "He is gone, Solomon. He made a scene in the lobby. Security escorted him to the parking lot. He looked deranged." "Thank you, Robert," I said. "I am sorry you had to see that." "Do not apologize, Solomon," Mr. Vance said gently. "But you know what this means. He is desperate. He has crossed the line into felonies. He is not going to stop. I know," I said. "Keep the deed safe. I might need it for the trial." I hung up. I walked to the window. I imagined Darius standing on the sidewalk outside the bank. He had no truck. He had no money. He had just committed a crime in front of witnesses. He was cornered. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mike, my head of security. "Sir, we are tracking him. He is on foot. He is heading toward the bus station. He looks unstable." "Let him go," I replied. "Just keep watching." I sat down and closed my eyes. I felt tired. Not physically tired, but tired in my soul. I had just publicly branded my son a criminal. I had cut off his last escape route. An hour later, my tablet chimed with an alert from the listening device in Darius' kitchen. He was home. I turned on the feed. He burst through the door. He was soaking wet from the rain. He looked manic. Tiffany was waiting for him at the table. She stood up, hopeful. "Did you get it?" she asked. "Did you get the money?" He laughed. It was a broken, jagged laugh. "No, Tiffany, I did not get the money." He knew. The old man knew. He was on the phone with the manager. He humiliated me. He told them it was a fraud. They took the deed. They threw me out. Tiffany sank back into her chair. Her face went gray. "We are dead," she whispered. "The loan sharks, Darius. They said today. They said if we do not have the first installment by tonight, they are coming." Darius paced the small kitchen. He was pulling at his hair. "We have nothing," he muttered. "No truck, no house, no money. He blocked us everywhere. He is watching us, Tiff. I can feel it." "Then we have no choice," Tiffany said. Her voice was sudden and sharp. "We have to stop playing games." "What do you mean?" Darius asked, stopping his pacing. "I mean, we stop trying to trick him," she said, standing up. "We stop trying to forge papers. We go to the source." She walked over to the knife block on the counter. She pulled out a large carving knife. The light from the window glinted off the steel. "We invite him over," she said. "We tell him we are sorry. We tell him we want to make amends. We get him in this house. We lock the door, and we make him sign. A real signature, with a notary present. Paul will do it. He is already in deep." "You mean kidnap him?" Darius whispered, his eyes wide. "I mean we do what we have to do to survive," Tiffany hissed. "He is one old man, Darius. One frail old man. We drug him. We threaten him. I do not care. But he is not leaving this house until we own his property." Darius looked at the knife. He looked at Tiffany. He looked at the empty cupboards. "Call him," he said. "Tell him Zola is sick. Tell him she is asking for him. He will come for her. He always comes for her." I watched them on the screen. My heart stopped beating for a second. They were going to use Zola as bait. They were going to use my love for that little girl to lure me into a trap. They were going to hold a knife to my throat. I stood up. My chair fell over backward. This was it. They had crossed the final line. They were no longer my family. They were hostiles. I picked up my phone. I called Aisha. "Prepare the extraction team," I said, "and call the police chief. Tell him I want to file charges for conspiracy to commit kidnapping." "Solomon," Aisha asked, her voice alarmed. "What happened?" "They are going to try to take me tonight," I said. "They are going to use Zola." I looked at the screen where Tiffany was dialing my number, a fake smile plastering itself onto her face. "Let them try," I whispered. "Let them bring the devil to my doorstep. They are about to find out that the devil drives a Ford truck and he is done playing nice." The rain was coming down in sheets when my phone rang at 6:00. It was the kind of rain that washes the dirt off the streets but cannot clean the stains off a soul. I looked at the caller ID. It was Tiffany. I picked up the phone and put it on speaker so Aisha could hear from the other side of my office desk. "Solomon," she cried, her voice trembling with a manufactured panic. "You have to come over. Zola is sick. She has a fever. She is asking for you. She keeps crying for Grandpa. We tried to call a doctor, but we do not have insurance anymore. Please, just come see her." I looked at Aisha. She nodded once. The team was in position. The wiretap in their kitchen had confirmed the plan hours ago. Zola was not sick. Zola was sitting at the kitchen table, terrified, while her parents crushed sleeping pills into a powder. They were going to drug me. They were going to force my hand to sign a deed transfer. It was a felony. It was kidnapping. And it was exactly the trap I needed them to spring. "I will be there in 20 minutes, Tiffany," I said, letting my voice sound frail and worried. "Do not worry. Grandpa is coming." I hung up. I stood and buttoned my flannel shirt over the Kevlar vest Mike insisted I wear. It felt heavy, but not as heavy as the stone in my heart. "Stay close, Mike." I spoke into the small microphone taped to my chest. "Do not breach until I give the signal code." "Omega. Copy that." Mr. Jefferson Mike's voice crackled in my earpiece. "We are 2 minutes behind you. I drove my rental sedan because my truck was gone chopped up for parts by my own flesh and blood." I pulled into their driveway. The house was dark except for a single light in the dining room. It looked like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. I walked to the door. I did not knock. I opened it and stepped inside. The smell hit me instantly. It was the smell of desperate people, sweat and old takeout and fear. Darius was standing by the door. As soon as I stepped over the threshold, he slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt. The click echoed in the empty hallway like a gunshot. "Dad," he said, breathless. "Thanks for coming. Zola is in the kitchen." He did not look me in the eye. He was wearing his suit pants but no shoes. He looked unraveled. "Where is she?" I asked, shuffling my feet, playing the part. "Is she okay?" Tiffany appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing a dress that was too tight and holding a bottle of wine. She had a smile plastered on her face that looked like it was painted on with a knife. "She is feeling a little better, Solomon," she said. "Come. Sit. We made dinner. A peace offering. We want to apologize for everything." I followed them into the kitchen. Zola was sitting at the table. She looked pale and small. She was not sick, but she was sick with fear. When she saw me, her eyes widened. She started to shake her head very slightly, a warning. "Grandpa," she whispered. I sat down next to her. I took her cold hand in mine. I squeezed it 3 times. "I am here, baby girl. I am here." Darius sat across from me. He poured wine into 4 glasses. He pushed 1 glass toward me. The liquid was dark red, almost black in the dim light. I noticed there were small white granules not fully dissolved at the bottom. Amateurs. They did not even know how to crush a pill correctly. "Let us toast," Darius said, raising his glass, his hand shaking so badly the wine sloshed over the rim. "To family. To starting over. To forgiveness." I looked at the glass. I looked at my son. I remembered the first time I held him. He was so small. I promised him I would protect him from the world. I failed. I should have protected the world from him. I picked up the glass. "To family," I mumbled. I brought the glass to my lips. I tilted it back, but I kept my lips pressed tight. I pretended to swallow. I made a gulping sound. "Drink up, Dad," Tiffany urged, watching me with the intensity of a vulture. "It is a good vintage." I lowered the glass. It was still full. I needed a distraction. I needed 5 seconds. "Is that a spider?" Zola suddenly screamed, pointing at the wall behind Tiffany. It was brilliant. It was improvised. And it was perfect. Tiffany shrieked and spun around. Darius jumped up, grabbing a magazine to swat the imaginary bug. In that split second of chaos, I poured the contents of my wine glass into the potted fern sitting on the center of the table. The soil drank the poison instantly. When they turned back, I was wiping my mouth with a napkin, the empty glass sitting in front of me. "I did not see it," Darius said, breathless. "It ran away," Zola said softly, looking at me. Her eyes were full of tears. She knew. She saved me. My 7-year-old granddaughter had more courage in her little finger than her parents had in their entire bodies. I sat back in the chair. Now I had to wait. I had to let them think they had won. I started to blink slowly. I let my head loll to the side. I slurred my words. "I feel tired," I whispered. "So tired." "It is working," Tiffany whispered to Darius. Her voice was sharp with excitement. He is going under. Just wait, Darius hissed. Make sure he is out. I let my eyes close. I let my breathing become heavy and rhythmic. I slumped forward, my forehead resting on the wooden table. I felt Zola's hand trembling in mine. I wanted to tell her it was okay, but I had to stay still. Is he asleep? Tiffany asked loudly. She poked my shoulder hard with a fingernail. I did not move. He is out, Darius said. Let us do it. Get the papers. Paul is waiting in the car outside. Signal him. I heard the back door open. Heavy footsteps entered the kitchen. Is it done? A rough voice asked. Paul the forger. Yeah, he is out cold, Darius said. He drank the whole glass. He won to wake up until tomorrow. Or never. Who cares? The cruelty of his words cut me deeper than any knife. Or never. My son was indifferent to whether I lived or died as long as he got the signature. Let us get this over with, Paul said. I want my money. I felt them grabbing my arms. They pulled me upright in the chair. My head flopped back, acting like a rag doll. They pushed a pen into my hand. Darius gripped my wrist. His hand was clammy. Okay, Dad, he whispered into my ear, his breath smelling of fear and liquor. Just one signature. Just sign the house over to me. You do not need it anymore. You do not need anything. You are just a useless old man taking up space. He began to move my hand toward the paper. I could feel the texture of the document under my fingertips. It was the quitclaim deed. The document that would strip me of the home I bought with Beatrice 40 years ago. I let him guide the pen. I let the tip touch the paper. Almost there, Tiffany hissed. Just sign it, you old bat. I felt Darius' grip tighten. He was forcing my hand to move. He was trying to trace my signature, but then I stopped. I stiffened my arm. I turned my wrist into iron. Darius tried to push, but my hand would not budge. What the hell, Darius muttered. Why is he... I stopped acting. I squeezed my hand shut around his wrist. I squeezed with the strength of a man who had loaded freight trains by hand for 20 years. I squeezed until I felt his radius and ulna grinding together. Darius gasped. Ow. Dad. Let go. I lifted my head slowly. I opened my eyes. They were not the cloudy, confused eyes of a drugged old man. They were clear. They were sharp. They were burning with a cold, righteous fire. I stared directly into Darius' face. He was inches from me. I saw the color drain from his skin. I saw his pupils dilate in sheer terror. You are not smart enough to trick me, son, I said, my voice low and steady. And you are certainly not strong enough to force me. Darius tried to pull away, but I held him fast. He was trapped. He is awake, Tiffany screamed, backing away until she hit the refrigerator. He is awake. Paul the forger dropped his bag and bolted for the back door. He knew when a job had gone south. Darius looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. Dad, we were just... Shut up, I roared. The sound filled the small kitchen, shaking the walls. I stood up, still crushing his wrist. I twisted his arm behind his back, forcing him down onto his knees. He cried out in pain. Zola, I said without looking at her. Go to the front door. Open it. Zola ran. I heard the deadbolt slide back. Omega! I shouted into the empty air. The front door crashed open. Mike and 4 armed security guards stormed into the house. They were wearing tactical vests. They moved with precision. Secure the premises, Mike shouted. 2 guards grabbed Tiffany, who was trying to climb out the window. 2 more grabbed Darius from my grip and slammed him against the wall, handcuffing him before he could take a breath. I stood in the center of the chaos, adjusting my flannel shirt. I picked up the wine glass I had supposedly drunk from. I picked up the deed they wanted me to sign. I looked at Darius. He was pinned to the wall, his face pressed against the plaster, crying like a child. You wanted my signature, Darius, I asked, holding up the paper. You wanted my authority. I ripped the paper in half. Then I ripped it again. I let the pieces flutter to the floor like confetti. You have it, I said. My authority just ended your life as a free man. I walked over to Zola, who was standing by Mike, holding his hand. I picked her up. Are we going home, Grandpa? She asked. Yes, baby girl, I said, stepping over the broken pieces of my son's schemes. We are going home, and we are never coming back here again. I walked out into the rain. The flashing lights of the police cars were already illuminating the street. I had called the chief myself. The kidnapping was over. The rescue was complete. But the punishment was just beginning. The kitchen was filled with the heavy breathing of men in tactical gear and the hysterical sobbing of my daughter-in-law, Tiffany. Two of my security guards held her by the arms near the window she had tried to escape through. Darius was still pinned against the wall by Mike, his cheek pressed against the cheap plaster, his hands cuffed behind his back in plastic zip ties. The room smelled of spilled wine and fear. I stood up from the table and brushed the wrinkles from my flannel shirt. I felt a strange calmness settle over me. The adrenaline of the physical struggle was fading, replaced by the cold certainty of what had to happen next. "You are a monster!" Solomon Tiffany screamed, her voice shrill and breaking. "You tricked us. You sat there and pretended to be a helpless old man. You pretended to be poor. You are a liar, a sick, twisted liar." I looked at her. Her makeup was running down her face in black streaks. She looked like a melting wax doll. "I never pretended to be poor, Tiffany," I said, my voice steady and filling the room. "I simply chose not to finance your stupidity. There is a difference between being broke and being smart with your money. You wouldn't know that because you have never earned a dollar you didn't immediately waste." Darius turned his head against the wall, trying to look at me. "Dad, please," he begged, snot running from his nose. "We were desperate. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just needed the signature. Please tell these guys to let us go. We can talk about this." "Talk?" I asked, walking over to where my jacket hung on the back of the chair. "We are done talking, Darius. You tried to drug me. You tried to forge my signature. You tried to steal the home I built with your mother. The time for conversation ended when you crushed those pills into my wine." I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out a thick blue folder. It was the dossier Aisha had prepared. The dossier for Nemesis Holdings. I threw it onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud right next to the poisoned fern. "You asked Aisha who Nemesis Holdings was," I said, looking at my son. "You asked who bought your debt. You asked who owned the paper on this house." Darius stared at the folder. His eyes widened as the realization began to dawn on him. "No," he whispered. "No. It can't be." I opened the folder. I spread the documents out on the table. The promissory notes, the credit card transfers, the mortgage deed. "Look at it, Darius," I commanded. "Look at the signature on the bottom line of the transfer agreement." He squinted. He saw the signature. It was sharp and angular. It was the signature of the CEO of Jefferson Logistics. It was my signature. "I am Nemesis," I said. The room went silent. Even Tiffany stopped screaming. She stared at me with her mouth open, looking from my face to the papers and back again. "You own our mortgage," she breathed. "I own everything," I corrected her. "I own the mortgage you haven't paid in 4 months. I own the credit card debt you ran up buying clothes to impress people you don't like. I own the personal loans Darius took out to cover his gambling losses. I own the floor you are standing on. I own the walls you are pinned against. I own the roof over your head." I picked up the foreclosure notice Aisha had drafted. "You received a letter yesterday," I continued. "It gave you 7 days to pay the full balance of $284,000. Darius began to cry again. "Dad, we don't have it. You know we don't have it. Mr. Jefferson, to you," I snapped. "And yes, I know you don't have it. That is why I am accelerating the timeline." I looked at Mike. "Release him." Mike stepped back. Darius slumped to the floor, rubbing his wrists against the plastic cuffs. He looked up at me, hopeful. He thought I was showing mercy. He thought I was giving him a second chance. "Get up," I said. He struggled to his feet. "You have violated the terms of your mortgage agreement by using the property to commit a felony," I stated, reciting the legal clause from memory. "Attempted kidnapping and elder abuse committed on the premises allows the lender to initiate immediate eviction for cause." I stepped closer to him. I was inches from his face. "You do not have 7 days anymore," I said. "You have 7 minutes." "What?" Darius stammered. "I want you out," I said. "Now, get your coats, get your shoes, and get out of my house." "But where will we go?" Tiffany shrieked. "It is raining. We have no money. We have no car. You took the truck. The police are on their way," I said, checking my watch. "I imagine they will give you a ride. But as far as this property is concerned, your tenancy is terminated. Nemesis Holdings is taking possession." "You can't do this to your family," Darius shouted, finding a spark of anger in his fear. "I am your son." My son died a long time ago, I replied, my voice void of emotion. My son was a boy who mowed lawns to buy a baseball glove. My son was a boy who respected his elders. You are just a thief who shares my DNA. And I treat thieves the same way I treat bad investments. I liquidate them. I turned to Zola. She was standing by the door holding the hand of one of the guards. She looked terrified, but she wasn't crying. She was watching me. She was watching her grandfather handle business. "Come here, Zola," I said gently. She ran to me. I picked her up. She buried her face in my shoulder. She felt solid and real in a room full of lies. "You are not taking her," Tiffany yelled, lunging forward. The guards restrained her easily. "She is my daughter. She is a witness," I said. "And she is a victim of child neglect. You left her alone for 6 hours yesterday with no food. You exposed her to a criminal conspiracy tonight. You tried to drug her grandfather in front of her. You are unfit." I looked at Mike. "Take Mrs. Jefferson and Mr. Jefferson to the front porch. Wait for the police. Hand over the video evidence from the kitchen camera. Make sure they don't touch anything on their way out." "Yes, Mr. J," Mike said. The guards hauled them toward the door. Darius was sobbing, begging, calling out to God. Tiffany was screaming obscenities, calling me every name in the book. I watched them go. I felt nothing. No pity, no regret, only the satisfaction of a job finished. When the door slammed shut, the silence returned to the kitchen. I looked around at the dirty dishes, the empty wine bottle, the poisoned plant. It was a scene of domestic rot. Grandpa Zola whispered into my ear, "Are they going to jail?" "Yes, baby girl," I said, stroking her hair. "Bad actions have bad consequences. They broke the rules." "What about me?" she asked. "Where will I sleep?" "You are coming home with me," I said. "To the big house, to the one with the garden. I have a room for you. It has a real bed. And tomorrow we will buy you whatever color paint you want for the walls." "Pink," she said immediately. "Pink it is," I agreed. I walked out the front door. The rain had turned into a drizzle. The flashing blue and red lights of the police cruisers were reflecting off the wet pavement. Darius and Tiffany were sitting on the steps, handcuffed now by the real police. They looked wet and miserable. I walked past them. I did not look down. I walked to the sedan Mike had parked at the curb. I put Zola in the back seat and buckled her in. Officer Miller, the same officer Darius had tried to manipulate days ago, was standing by his cruiser. He tipped his hat to me. "Mr. Jefferson," he said, "we have the recording Mike sent over. It is open and shut. Attempted kidnapping, assault, conspiracy. We will take it from here." "Thank you, officer," I said. "I will be at the station in the morning to file the formal deposition." I got into the driver's seat. I started the engine. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw my son being loaded into the back of a police car. He looked at me through the window. His face was a mask of despair. He mouthed the word "Dad" one last time. I shifted the car into drive. I did not wave. I did not cry. I turned the wheel and drove away. I was Solomon Jefferson. I had built an empire from nothing. I had weathered strikes and recessions and wars. I had survived the death of my wife. And tonight, I had survived the betrayal of my son. I looked at Zola in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, watching the streetlights pass by. "Are you hungry, baby girl?" I asked. "Yes, Grandpa," she said. "Let us get some pancakes," I said. "The diner on 5th is open all night." We drove into the city. The skyline was bright ahead of us. Somewhere in that grid of lights was my office, my trucks, my legacy. And sitting in the back seat was the future. Darius wanted a fortune. He got a cell. I wanted a family. I looked back at Zola. I had saved the only part of it that was worth saving. The takeover was complete. Nemesis had collected her due. Now it was time to rebuild. The internet is a dangerous weapon in the hands of a desperate liar. I learned this lesson 48 hours after I watched the police drag my son and his wife away in handcuffs. They had made bail. Of course they had. They used the last of their hidden cash, or maybe they found a bondsman foolish enough to trust them. But they were not free. They were cornered animals. And cornered animals do not think. They bite. I was sitting in my office at Jefferson Logistics reviewing the quarterly shipping manifests when Aisha burst into the room. She did not knock. Her face was pale. She held up her tablet. "You need to see this, Solomon," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "It is trending." I took the tablet. On the screen was a live video stream. The title read, Rich father-in-law stole my child and threw us on the street. It was Tiffany. She was sitting on the floor of what looked like a cheap motel room. The lighting was dim. She wore no makeup. Her hair was messy. She looked like the picture of a grieving, devastated mother. She was crying, big, wet tears that rolled down her cheeks on command. "He is a monster," she sobbed into the camera. "He pretended to be a poor old man so we would take care of him. We fed him, we housed him, we loved him, and all the while he was a multi-millionaire secretly plotting to destroy us. He framed my husband for fraud. He planted evidence. And then the worst part." She paused for dramatic effect, looking directly into the lens. "He kidnapped my daughter. He used his private security goons to snatch my 7-year-old baby from my arms. He paid off the police. He paid off the judges. Now we are homeless and my baby is gone. Please help us. We need money for a lawyer. We need justice." I watched the viewer count climb. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. They were vicious. People were calling for my head. They were calling me a predator. They were donating money to the link she had pinned at the bottom of the screen. "He is winning the court of public opinion," Aisha said, pacing the floor. "We need to issue a statement. We need to sue for defamation. We need to get a gag order." I handed the tablet back to her. I stood up and walked to the window. Below me, reporters were already gathering at the gates of my facility. I could see the news vans setting up their satellite dishes. They smelled blood. "No, Aisha," I said calmly. "We do not sue. Not yet. If we sue, we look defensive. If we issue a statement denying it, we look like we are hiding something. We do not get down in the mud with pigs. You get dirty and the pig likes it. Then what do we do?" she asked. "They are destroying your reputation, Solomon. Investors are going to see this. Partners are going to see this. Let them see it," I said. "Let them see exactly who Solomon Jefferson is." I turned back to her. "Schedule a press conference." "Not a statement. A full press conference. Right here in the main atrium. Invite everyone. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the local news, even the tabloids. Invite them all." "For what?" Aisha asked, confused. "To refute the allegations?" "No," I said, buttoning my jacket. "To announce the Beatrice Jefferson Scholarship Fund." Aisha stared at me. Then a slow smile spread across her face. She understood. She saw the play. It was not a defensive move. It was a power move. It was a way to show the world that while Tiffany was crying in a motel room begging for handouts, I was standing on top of an empire giving away millions. It was a contrast so sharp it would cut through the noise like a razor. "Do it," I ordered. "Set it for 2:00. At 1:55, I stood backstage behind the heavy velvet curtains of the atrium. I could hear the murmur of the crowd. The room was packed. Every news outlet in the state was there. They were expecting a scandal. They were expecting an angry old man trying to explain why he stole a child. They were hungry for drama. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I was not wearing flannel today. I was wearing a bespoke navy suit, silk tie, and polished Oxfords. I stood tall. I looked like the CEO of an $80 million company. I looked like power. The curtains parted. I walked out to the podium. The flash bulbs erupted like a lightning storm. It was blinding. I did not flinch. I walked to the microphone and gripped the sides of the podium. I waited. I let the silence stretch out until the room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice booming through the speakers without a tremor. "Thank you for coming. I know why you are here. You have heard stories, you have heard rumors, you have heard the cries of a woman who claims to be a victim." I paused. I looked at the reporters in the front row. They were leaning forward, pens poised. "But I am not here to talk about rumors," I continued. "I am not here to talk about the desperate lies of people who have lost their way. I am here to talk about the future." I gestured to the screen behind me. A massive image of my late wife Beatrice appeared. She was smiling, holding Zola when she was a baby. "My wife Beatrice and I built this company from a single truck," I said. "We built it on hard work, on honesty, and on family. Real family. The kind of family that protects children, not endangers them." I saw the reporters exchanging glances. This was not the script they expected. "Today I am announcing the launch of the Beatrice Jefferson Scholarship Fund," I announced. I am endowing this fund with $5 million of my personal wealth. This fund will provide full college tuition for 50 underprivileged students in our city every year, students who know the value of hard work, students who want to build something, not steal it. The room erupted in whispers. $5 million. It was a headline that buried Tiffany S. Motel's sob story. It was a number that commanded respect. A reporter from a tabloid channel raised his hand, shouting over the noise, "Mr. Jefferson, what about your daughter-in-law? She says you kidnapped her child. She says you are abusive." I looked at him. I did not look away. "My granddaughter Zola is safe," I said, my voice dropping to a register that vibrated in their chests. "She is under my legal guardianship granted by the state because her parents left her alone in a house with no food and no power while they plotted to defraud a senior citizen. She is currently in a private school enjoying her childhood protected from the toxicity of greed." I leaned into the microphone. "And as for the woman you mentioned," I continued, "I do not know her. The woman I knew died the day she decided to poison her family for a paycheck. The person speaking on the internet is a stranger to me, and I do not discuss strangers. I discuss business. And my business is building a future for my granddaughter and for this city." I stepped back. "Thank you. That is all." I turned and walked away. The questions shouted after me were drowned out by the applause of my employees who had gathered on the balconies above. They cheered for me. They cheered for the scholarship. They cheered because they knew the truth. I walked back to my office. Aisha was waiting. She was beaming. "The stock is up," she said, showing me her phone. "Social media is pivoting. People are looking up the scholarship. They are looking up your history. They are seeing the charity work. The narrative is shifting, Solomon. You looked like a titan out there." "And Tiffany?" I asked, sitting down heavily in my chair. Aisha checked her tablet. "Her stream is still live, but the comments are changing. People are asking why she refused to get a job. People are asking about the neglect charge you mentioned. The donations have stopped." "Good," I said. I looked out the window. The rain had started again. I felt a deep exhaustion settle into my bones. It was hard work destroying your own family. It was heavy lifting. But it had to be done. "They wanted a media war," I whispered to the empty room. "They brought a knife to a nuclear fight. Tiffany thought she could shame me into submission. She thought she could use my privacy against me. She forgot that I spent 40 years building a reputation of iron and steel. She forgot that in the world of business, credibility is currency. And she was bankrupt." I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing Zola safe in her new room painting a picture. "Keep crying, Tiffany," I thought. "Cry all you want. The only person listening now is your lawyer, and he is about to ask for a retainer you cannot pay." The press conference was over. The message was sent. Solomon Jefferson was not a victim. He was a force of nature, and the storm was just getting started. Tiffany made a fatal tactical error on Tuesday morning. She decided to bring the circus to my front door. I was in a meeting with my operations managers when Aisha alerted me. She pointed to the security monitors. There in the main lobby of Jefferson Logistics stood my daughter-in-law. She was holding her phone up on a selfie stick, streaming live to the 20,000 people she had duped with her tears. She was screaming. She was pointing at the security guards, calling them hired thugs. She was demanding to see her daughter. She was playing the role of the grieving mother fighting the billionaire Goliath. I looked at the screen. She thought she was besieging a fortress. She did not realize she had walked into a trap. The lobby of my headquarters is equipped with a massive digital display wall, usually used to track global shipments and show company metrics. It is 20 feet high and 40 feet wide. It dominates the room. "Aisha," I said, standing up and buttoning my suit jacket, "connect your laptop to the lobby mainframe. Hijack the display." "What are you going to play?" she asked, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. "Everything I said. The greatest hits of the Jefferson family." I took the private elevator down. I walked into the lobby. The sound of her voice was shrill and grating, echoing off the polished marble floors. "He is hiding," she yelled into her phone camera. "He is hiding in his ivory tower while I stand here begging for my child. He is afraid of the truth." I walked out from behind the security desk. I did not have security escort her out. I signaled them to stand down. I walked straight toward her. I entered the frame of her video. "I am right here, Tiffany," I said, my voice calm and projecting without a microphone. She spun around. Her eyes widened. She saw me, and for a split second she looked terrified. But then she remembered her audience. She shoved the phone in my face. "There he is," she shrieked. "The kidnapper. Tell them, Solomon. Tell the world why you stole my daughter." I looked into the lens. I saw the viewer count. 30,000 people. 30,000 jurors. "I took Zola because you left her alone in a freezing house to plot a felony," I said simply. "Liar," she screamed. "We are good parents. We just fell on hard times because you cut us off. We needed help." "You needed help," I repeated. I looked up at the massive screen behind her. I nodded to Aisha, who was watching from the mezzanine. "Let us see what you needed help with." The screen flickered to life. It was brighter than the sun. The image was crystal clear. It was a video clip from a casino security camera. I had bought it along with the debt. It showed Darius. He was sitting at a high-stakes blackjack table. He was laughing. He was drinking champagne. He pushed a stack of chips onto the table. The timestamp was from 3 months ago, the night they told me they could not afford Zola-S asthma medication. "That is your husband, Tiffany," I said, pointing to the giant screen. "That is $10,000 on a single hand. He lost it in 30 seconds. Tiffany turned pale. She tried to block the view with her body, but the screen was too big. "That is old footage," she stammered. "That was years ago." The screen changed. It was a bank statement. It was highlighted in red. It showed the transfers. Jefferson Logistics Shell account to Tiffany Jefferson. Date: 2 weeks ago. Amount: $5,000. Purpose listed: emergency medical expenses. "And here is where that money went," I said. The screen changed again. It was a photo from her social media, which she had deleted but which my investigators had archived. It showed Tiffany posing with a new Hermes bag. The caption read, "Treat yourself." The date matched the transfer exactly. "You told me you needed surgery," I said to the camera. "You bought a purse." The comments on her stream began to slow down. The hearts and angry faces stopped. People were confused. "This is fake," she yelled, her voice cracking. "He doctored the photos. He is a billionaire with resources. Do not believe him." I stepped closer to her. I was towering over her. "You want them to believe you are a victim," I said. "You want them to believe you love me and I am the cruel one." I looked up at the screen again. "Play the audio, Aisha." The lobby filled with static and then voices cut through the air. It was the recording from their kitchen. The recording from the night before the kidnapping. It was Tiffany S. voice. Clear, sharp, venomous. "He is just a useless old man taking up space. We drug him, we threaten him, I do not care, but he is not leaving this house until we own his property." Then Darius S. voice. "When he burns this place down, do not say I did not warn you." Then Tiffany again. "Who cares about a senile old man? Once he is committed, we sell the house and he rots in the state facility. It is perfect." The silence in the lobby was absolute. The employees who had gathered on the balconies were staring in open-mouthed shock, but the silence on the internet was even louder. I looked at Tiffany's phone screen. The comments were flying now, but they were different. "OMG, she planned to kill him. Monster. She bought a bag while Grandpa paid the bills. Call the police. You deserve jail." Tiffany stared at the phone. Her face was gray. She looked at me. She looked at the giant screen where her words were still displayed in text over a waveform graphic. "You recorded us," she whispered. "That is illegal." "You were in my house for some of those conversations," I said, "and for the others you were conspiring to commit a felony against a vulnerable adult. Privacy laws do not protect predators, Tiffany." She backed away. She lowered the phone. The live stream was still running. 35,000 people were watching her fall apart. "You ruined everything," she sobbed. "You ruined our lives." I stepped forward. I looked directly into the camera lens. "I did not ruin your life," I said to the 35,000 witnesses. "I paid for your life. For 10 years. I paid for the roof over your head. I paid for the food in your fridge. I paid for the clothes on your back. And in return, you plotted to take my freedom. You plotted to take my dignity. You wanted to put me in a warehouse to die so you could gamble my legacy away." I paused. I let the weight of the truth settle. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. I am Solomon Jefferson. I built this building with bricks I laid myself, and I will not let anyone tear it down, not even my own blood. Tiffany dropped the phone. It clattered onto the marble floor. The screen cracked, but the camera was still facing up. It captured her face as she realized it was over. "Security," I said calmly. 3 guards stepped forward. They did not need to be rough. Tiffany had no fight left in her. Please remove Mrs. Jefferson from the premises, I said, and ensure she does not return. If she does, call the police and charge her with trespassing. They took her arms. She did not scream. She did not fight. She just sagged like a puppet whose strings had been cut. They walked her to the door. The automatic glass door slid open and she was pushed out into the street. I looked down at the phone on the floor. I picked it up. The comments were still scrolling. Respect Grandpa. Legend. Team Solomon. I looked into the camera one last time. To anyone watching, I said, take care of your elders, because some of us bite back. I ended the stream. I handed the broken phone to Aisha, who had come down to the lobby. Keep this as evidence, I said. The lobby erupted in applause. My staff, my drivers, my warehouse workers, they were clapping, they were cheering, they saw the truth. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Mike, my head of security. That was brutal, boss, he said, grinning. It was necessary. Mike, I said, adjusting my cuffs. I walked back to the elevator. I felt lighter. The secret was out. The shame was gone. They had tried to use the public to destroy me, and I had used the public to bury them. Darius and Tiffany were finished. They had no money, they had no home, and now they had no reputation. Their names were mud. No one would hire them. No one would trust them. They were pariahs. I rode the elevator back to my office. I sat in my chair and looked out at the city. The sun was breaking through the clouds. It is done, I whispered. But there was one last battle to fight, the most important one. The battle for Zola. I had won the war of opinion. Now I had to win the war of law. I had to make sure that little girl never went back to those monsters. I pulled the file for the custody hearing toward me. Rest up, Solomon, I told myself. Tomorrow we go to court, and I am going to bring the whole empire with me. The family court smelled of floor wax and broken promises. It was a different smell than the criminal precinct or the corporate boardroom. It was the scent of lives being torn apart by the people who were supposed to hold them together. I sat on the right side of the aisle. My suit was charcoal gray, tailored to perfection. Aisha sat next to me, her posture rigid, a stack of files in front of her that could bury a small country. On the left side sat Darius and Tiffany. They had cleaned up. Darius was wearing a suit that was clearly bought at a thrift store yesterday. It didn't fit him. The sleeves were too short, exposing his wrists that still bore the faint red marks from the zip ties my security team had used. Tiffany was wearing a modest dress and a cardigan, trying to look like the soccer mom she never was. She was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, but her eyes were dry. The judge entered. Judge Reynolds. She was a woman in her 60s, with glasses perched on the end of her nose and eyes that had seen every variety of lie a parent could tell. She sat down and looked at the files. She looked at me. She looked at them. This is the hearing for permanent custody of Zola Jefferson, she announced. Darius's lawyer stood up. He was a court-appointed attorney, a young man who looked overworked and underprepared. But he had a strategy. Attack the old man. Your Honor, he began, gesturing at me. Mr. Solomon Jefferson is 71 years old. He is a single man. He runs a massive corporation that demands all of his time. While we do not deny his financial success, money does not make a parent. His son, my client, made mistakes. He fell on hard times. But poverty is not a crime. He loves his daughter. Placing a 7-year-old child with a geriatric guardian who could die of natural causes at any moment is not in the best interest of the child. It is irresponsible. I listened. I felt the anger heat up in my chest, but I kept my face like stone. Geriatric, irresponsible, the lawyer continued. Furthermore, we believe Mr. Jefferson is using his wealth to alienate the child from her parents. He is buying her affection. He is dazzling her with trucks and warehouses. He is not offering a home. He is offering a theme park. It was my turn. Aisha stood up, but I put a hand on her arm. May I speak? I asked the judge. Judge Reynolds looked over her glasses. You are represented by counsel Mr. Jefferson. I know I said standing up slowly, but this is not a legal argument. It is a life argument, and I would like to answer the accusation that I am buying my granddaughter. The judge nodded. Proceed. I walked to the center of the room. I did not look at Darius. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, I said, my voice deep and steady. I am 71 years old. That is a fact. I have white hair. My knees hurt when it rains. I might have 10 years left. I might have 20. I might have until tomorrow. No one knows. I turned and pointed at Darius and Tiffany. But I know one thing. Time is not the only thing that runs out. Character runs out too. Patience runs out. Love, if it is not real, runs out the moment the credit card is declined. I walked closer to the bench. The opposing counsel says I am using my money to buy my granddaughter. He is right. A murmur went through the courtroom. Darius looked up hopeful. I am buying her, I continued, my voice rising. I am buying her safety. I am buying her a roof that will never be foreclosed on because her father gambled away the mortgage payment. I am buying her a refrigerator that will always have milk in it. I am buying her a school tuition that will never bounce. I am buying her the freedom to be a child instead of a pawn in her parents' con games. I paused. I looked back at my son. They say poverty is not a crime. I agree. I was poor for 40 years. I ate ramen noodles so that boy could eat steak. I wore holes in my boots so he could have Jordans. Being poor is hard, but being wicked is a choice. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. It was the police report from the night of the kidnapping. These parents left a 7-year-old girl alone in a freezing house with no power for 6 hours while they plotted a felony. They used her as bait to lure me into a trap. They sat her at a table and poured poison into a glass in front of her. That is not poverty, Your Honor. That is depravity. I turned back to the judge. Money is just paper, Judge. I have $80 million of it. I would burn every single bill in the parking lot right now if it meant my son was a good man. If it meant he loved his daughter more than he loved the easy way out. But he doesn't. He loves the lifestyle. He loves the image. He looks at Zola, and he sees a bargaining chip. I look at her, and I see the future. I took a breath. The room was silent. I may be old, I may be busy, but every morning for the last week I have made Zola pancakes. I have driven her to school. I have helped her with her math homework. I have read her bedtime stories. I did not do these things with money. I did them with time. I did them with love. And if I die tomorrow, Zola will know that her grandfather spent his last breath fighting for her. That is a legacy money cannot buy. And it is a legacy these two people forfeited the moment they chose greed over their own flesh and blood. I sat down. The courtroom remained quiet. Judge Reynolds took off her glasses. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at Darius and Tiffany. Do you have anything to say? Mr. Jefferson? Mrs. Jefferson. Darius stood up. He looked small. He looked defeated. We just want our family back, he mumbled. It was weak. It was a lie. Judge Reynolds opened a folder on her desk. It was the report from the guardian ad litem, the court-appointed advocate for Zola. I have spoken with Zola, the judge said. She is a very bright, very articulate 7-year-old. She told me about the night the lights went out. She told me about the night you tried to make her grandfather sleep. She told me that she is afraid of the dark house. She told me she feels safe in the big house with the trucks. The judge closed the folder. The sound was final. This court finds that Darius and Tiffany Jefferson are unfit parents. The evidence of neglect, endangerment, and criminal conspiracy is overwhelming. The court is appalled by the callousness displayed toward this child. She looked at me. Mr. Solomon Jefferson is granted full permanent legal and physical custody of Zola Jefferson. Furthermore, I am terminating the parental rights of Darius and Tiffany Jefferson effective immediately. You will have no visitation. You will have no contact. You are to stay 500 feet away from the child and her guardian at all times. Tiffany let out a scream. It wasn't a scream of heartbreak. It was a scream of rage. You can't do this. We need her. The benefits. The child support. She clapped a hand over her mouth, but it was too late. She had revealed the truth one last time. She didn't want the child. She wanted the state benefits that came with the child. Judge Reynolds glared at her. One more word, ma'am, and I will hold you in contempt. Bailiff, remove them. I stood up. Aisha was smiling. She squeezed my hand. We did it, Solomon. She is yours. I walked out of the courtroom. Darius and Tiffany were arguing with the bailiff, blaming each other, blaming the judge, blaming the world. They didn't look at me. I didn't look at them. They were ghosts now. They were part of the past. I walked into the hallway. Zola was sitting on a bench with Mike. She was coloring in a book. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes were wide, questioning. Grandpa, she asked. I knelt down. My knees cracked, reminding me of my age, but I didn't care. I opened my arms. "It is over, baby girl," I said. "We are a team now. Just you and me." She dropped the crayon. She ran into my arms. I held her tight. I felt her small heart beating against my chest. It was the strongest rhythm I had ever felt, stronger than the engines of my trucks, stronger than the pulse of the city. "Let's go home," I whispered. We walked to the elevator. I held her hand. Aisha walked beside us, the architect of my legal victory. Mike walked behind us, the shield. We were a unit. We were a fortress. I had $80 million in the bank. I had a fleet of 400 trucks. But as I walked out of that courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, holding the hand of a 7-year-old girl, I knew that I was finally truly a rich man. The war for my fortune was over. The war for my legacy had just been won, and my son, the man who wanted everything for nothing, was left with exactly what he had earned: nothing. The Rolls-Royce Phantom is a quiet car. It is built to insulate you from the world outside, to keep the noise, the dirt, and the desperation at bay. I sat in the back seat on leather that smelled of money and power. Next to me sat Aisha. She was reviewing the final writ of possession on her tablet. The windows were tinted so dark that no one could see in, but I could see everything out. We were parked across the street from the house that used to belong to my son. It was raining again, a cold gray drizzle that soaked into the bones. It was fitting. The day Darius tried to bury me was sunny. The day I buried his future was gray. "Look at them," Aisha said, softly pointing toward the driveway. A sheriff's cruiser was parked behind Darius's leased SUV, which was about to be repossessed. A moving truck sat idling, its exhaust puffing white clouds into the air. It was not a white glove moving service. It was an eviction crew. 4 large men in coveralls stood by the curb holding rolls of heavy-duty black trash bags. They were the cleanup crew. The men you call when you need a life scraped off the floor. Sheriff Brody walked up to the front door. He pounded on it with his fist. "Open up, Mr. Jefferson. This is the sheriff's department. We have a court order for immediate eviction. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises." Nothing happened. The house remained silent. The curtains were drawn tight. They were in there hiding like children playing hide and seek, thinking if they stayed quiet enough the monster would go away. But the law is not a monster. The law is a machine, and it does not stop. "Drill it," Brody ordered the locksmith standing behind him. The sound of the drill was a high-pitched whine that cut through the rain. The lock gave way with a snap. The door swung open. The deputies drew their tasers just in case and stepped inside. I watched on the monitor inside the car connected to the cameras that were still recording inside the house. Darius and Tiffany were sitting on the floor of the living room. They were surrounded by boxes they had half packed. They looked up like deer caught in headlights. "Get out," Sheriff Brody barked. "Get up and get out. You are trespassing on private property belonging to Nemesis Holdings." "We have nowhere to go," Tiffany screamed, clutching a pillow. "Not today. Please just give us one more day." "You had 7 days," Brody said. "You had a month. You had a trial. Now you have 0 seconds. Move." The eviction crew swarmed in. They did not pack carefully. They did not wrap the china in bubble wrap. They swept armfuls of clothes into the black trash bags. They threw pots and pans into cardboard boxes. They treated Tiffany's designer life like the garbage it was. I watched them drag a mattress out the front door and toss it onto the wet lawn. It landed with a wet thud. Tiffany's collection of shoes followed raining down onto the muddy grass. Darius came out first. He was being escorted by 2 deputies. He was not handcuffed this time, but he looked like a prisoner. He looked broken. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. I had never seen him look so unkempt. He was shouting something, but the sound of the rain and the moving truck drowned him out. Then he saw the car. He saw the massive black Rolls-Royce parked across the street. He knew. He knew exactly who was inside. He stopped fighting the deputies. He stared at the car. His eyes locked onto the rear window where I sat. He broke free from the deputies. He ran toward the car. He slammed his hands against the glass. His face was pressed against the window, distorted by the rain and his own tears. "Dad!" he screamed. I could hear him through the glass, muted but distinct. "Dad, I know you are in there. Open the door. Please, Dad, it is raining. We are on the street. Help us. Just this one time, I swear I will change." I looked at him. I looked at the face of the boy I had carried on my shoulders. I looked at the face of the man who had poured poison into my wine glass. He looked pathetic. He looked small. He looked like a stranger. Aisha shifted in her seat. "Are you going to talk to him, Solomon?" "No," I said. My voice was flat. It was the voice of a man who had nothing left to say. Darius kept pounding. "Dad, look at me. I am your son. You cannot do this. You cannot leave me here. I have nothing. You have what you earned." I thought, but I did not say it. Tiffany came running up behind him. She was holding a trash bag full of clothes. She looked at the car. She looked at me. She did not scream. She did not beg. She just stared with hatred, pure and cold. She knew the game was over. She knew she had lost. Sheriff Brody grabbed Darius by the shoulder and pulled him away from the car. "Step back, sir. You are harassing the property owner." "Property owner?" Darius laughed a hysterical wet sound. "He is my father. He is supposed to love me." The sheriff dragged him back to the curb. The eviction crew continued to pile their lives onto the grass. A lamp, a toaster, a box of books. It looked like a yard sale at the end of the world. I pressed the button on the door. The window rolled down just an inch. The cold air rushed in. Darius heard the motor. He looked up, hope flaring in his eyes. He thought I was breaking. He thought the old soft Solomon was coming back to save him. "Dad," he called out, struggling against the sheriff. "Dad, please." I leaned forward so my mouth was close to the crack. "Goodbye, Darius," I said. I rolled the window up. The glass sealed shut, cutting off his voice, cutting off the rain, cutting off the past. "Driver," I said to the man in the front seat, "take us to the school. I want to pick up Zola early." The car pulled away smoothly, gliding over the wet pavement. I did not look back. I did not watch them standing in the rain surrounded by trash bags. I did not watch the final collapse of their house of cards. I looked forward. The road ahead was clear. The city was waiting. I had a company to run. I had a granddaughter to raise. I had a legacy to rebuild. My chest felt tight for a moment, a phantom pain of the heart. But then it passed, replaced by a deep, steady rhythm. It was the rhythm of survival. It was the rhythm of justice. Some lessons are learned in the classroom, some are learned in the boardroom, and some, the hardest ones, are learned on the curb in the rain with nothing but the clothes on your back. Darius had finally graduated, and I was done paying his tuition. The sun dipped below the tree line, casting a long shadow across the surface of Lake Beatrice. It is a private body of water sitting on the north edge of my estate, named after the only woman I ever loved. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. It was the smell of peace. It was the smell of a silence that I had bought with $80 million in a war against my own blood. I sat on the end of the wooden dock, my legs dangling over the edge. Next to me sat Zola. She is 8 years old now, taller and stronger than the frightened little girl who whispered in my ear at a birthday party. She wore a baseball cap with the Jefferson Logistics logo pulled low over her eyes. She held her fishing rod with a focus that reminded me of myself when I was young. She did not fidget. She did not complain that it was taking too long. She watched the bobber float on the water, waiting for the right moment to strike. She had learned patience. It has been exactly 1 year since the eviction. 1 year since I sat in the back of a Rolls-Royce and watched my son's life collapse under the weight of his own greed. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty. They ask me if a father should ever be that hard on his child. I look at them and I shake my head. I do not feel guilt. I feel relief. Guilt is what you feel when you do something wrong. Relief is what you feel when you finally cut out the infection that was killing you. I saw Darius last week. It was by accident, or maybe it was fate. I took my truck, not the Rolls, but the old Ford, which I bought back from the chop shop and restored to a hand car wash on 4th Street. It is a place where you pay $10 and men with rags scrub the road salt off your tires. I saw him there. He was wearing a blue jumpsuit with his name stitched on the pocket. He was scrubbing the rims of a Mercedes. He looked older. His hair was graying at the temples. He looked tired. But he also looked something else, something I had not seen in him since he was a boy. He looked focused. He was working. He was sweating. He was earning a wage. He saw me sitting in the cab of the truck. He paused, his sponge dripping soapy water onto the pavement. For a moment I thought he might throw it down. I thought he might scream or beg or run away, but he did not. He looked at me, then he looked at the truck, then he nodded once. A short, sharp nod of acknowledgement. Then he went back to scrubbing the tire. He did not ask for money. He did not ask for forgiveness. He just did the job. It is the first honest dollar that boy has earned in 40 years. Maybe there is hope for him yet. Maybe starting at the bottom where I started is exactly what he needed to become a man. As for Tiffany, well, fraud is a serious business, especially when it involves crossing state lines and forging federal documents. She is currently a guest of the state residing in a correctional facility 2 counties over. She writes letters sometimes. Long, rambling letters blaming Darius, blaming me, blaming society. She still does not understand. She thinks she is in a cage because I put her there. She does not realize she built the cage herself, bar by bar, lie by lie. I do not read the letters. I burn them in the fireplace. The smoke goes up the chimney and disappears just like her influence on this family. "Grandpa," Zola whispered, breaking my reverie, "the bobber is moving." "Wait for it," I said softly. "Do not pull yet. Let him take it." Zola watched her hands steady on the reel. She is the heir. She knows it now. She spends her weekends at the depot asking the mechanics how the diesel engines work. She asks the dispatchers how they track the shipments. She is not afraid of grease. She is not afraid of work. She knows that the trucks do not move by magic. They move because people push them. "Now," I said. Zola jerked the rod back, setting the hook. The line went tight. The water splashed. She reeled it in, fighting the weight, finding the rhythm. It was a small bass flashing silver in the twilight. She pulled it onto the dock, beaming with pride. "I got him, Grandpa," she cheered. "You sure did, baby girl," I said, helping her unhook the fish. "You did the work and you got the reward. That is how it works." We released the fish back into the water, watching it swim away into the deep, dark green. "Grandpa," she asked, wiping her hands on her jeans, "do you miss them, Daddy and Mommy?" I looked out across the lake. I looked at the estate that surrounded us, the legacy that was safe now, protected by ironclad trusts and a granddaughter with a spine of steel. "I miss who I wanted them to be," I said honestly, "but I do not miss who they were. You cannot miss a storm, Zola. You can only be grateful when it passes." She leaned her head on my shoulder. The sun was gone now. The first stars were appearing in the sky. The crickets were singing their evening song. "I am glad I am here," she said simply. "I am glad you are here too," I replied. We packed up the gear and walked back up the path toward the big house. The lights were on in the kitchen, warm and inviting. Aisha was coming over for dinner tonight. She had brought the final adoption papers. The judge had signed them yesterday. Zola Jefferson was legally my daughter now in the eyes of the law, just as she had always been in the eyes of my heart. I stopped at the top of the hill and looked back at the lake. It was dark and quiet. The water was still. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool night air. I was 72 years old. I had fought a war in my own living room. I had destroyed my son to save my granddaughter. And standing there under the vast American sky, I knew I would do it all again. Money is just paper. It burns. It tears. It blows away in the wind. But character is stone. It lasts forever. I took Zola's hand. "Come on, baby girl," I said. "Let us go home. I have a business to run, and you have homework to do." We walked into the house and closed the door, locking out the night, locking out the past, and locking in the future. The house was not just a building anymore. It was a fortress. It was a sanctuary. And for the first time in a long time, it was a home. Through this ordeal, I learned that the most dangerous inheritance you can give a child is not debt, but entitlement. I spent decades building an empire to protect my son from the world, never realizing I was preventing him from becoming a man. True wealth is not measured in logistics fleets or bank accounts. It is measured in the integrity you keep when no one is watching. Money can buy a house, but it cannot buy a home. It can buy obedience, but it never buys respect. Sometimes you have to burn the safety net to teach someone how to fly. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let us meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I am looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more on my channel. Do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.